Chapter 1473. The Divine Black Army. Chen Zong's expression turned solemn. Su Mubai was specially recruited by the Divine Black Army with a record-breaking vitality C of 210 miles and a 21:1 compression ratio. Out of curiosity, Chen Zong asked about it and was instantly shocked. The Divine Black Army belonged to the Xiantian Army. The Xiantian Army was a collective name and had their own bugle calls. The Divine Black Army was one of the bugle calls, and it was the most elite and most outstanding army in the Xiantian Army. At the same time, it had the fewest members. The Xiantian Palace was the academy built by the Xiantian Army and the Zhenyuan Guards based on the Xiantian dynasty's power. It was the recruitment base for the Xiantian Army and the Zhenyuan Guard. Entering the Xiantian Palace was equivalent to the preparation of the Xiantian Army and the Zhenyuan Guards. The Divine Black Army was the most outstanding army in the Xiantian Army, so the threshold was naturally very high. It was much higher than the other armies in the Xiantian Army, and it would not easily recruit new people. Even if it did, most of them would choose from the other armies. However, some outstanding geniuses had such an opportunity. Su Mubai had broken the record and was extraordinary, so the Divine Black Army naturally wanted him. Su Mubai also knew the status of the Divine Black Army, so he did not hesitate when he was invited. The Divine Black Army, Chen Zong repeated, his eyes shining brightly. When he chose to enter the Xiantian Palace, he also planned to enter the Xiantian Army or the Zhenyuan Guards. Between the two, Chen Zong actually had a preference. The Xiantian Army. As the most elite army in the Xiantian Army, the Divine Black Army was naturally the first choice. In fact, many prodigies who wanted to join the Xiantian Army were aiming for the Divine Black Army. Unfortunately, most of them were not fated to join the Divine Black Army. The Divine Black Army was not something they could join just because they wanted to. It's about time for me to break through, Chen Zong thought to himself. Now that he had cultivated to this level, his cultivation had reached its limit and could not break through anymore. However, he could still continue to fuse the 4 half-step Tao intent. However, the difficulty of the fusion was very high. Who knew how long it would take to complete the fusion? Chen Zong estimated that it would take at least 10 years before there was any hope. If he fused all 4 half-step Tao intents, a few decades? A few hundred years? Based on his current progress, that should be the case. That was too long. It was impossible for him to stay in the semi-sage realm for hundreds of years. It was impossible for him to stay in the semi-sage realm for dozens of years. That would mean that he would fall behind his peers. Opportunities were to be fought for. How could they compete? Time was very important. A step earlier or a step later would make a difference. There was no room for hesitation in the struggle for power. It was time for a breakthrough. It was time for him to make a breakthrough. Then, Chen Zong heard the news that Chu Zhongyang had made a breakthrough. As soon as he broke through, the wind and clouds surged. His aura was astonishing. In the end, his condensed origin Qi C reached 220 miles. He broke a new record again, breaking the record set by Su Mubai. The elemental energy C was also 5 kilometers long, and the compression ratio was 22:1. Without a doubt, Chu Zhongyang's performance surpassed Su Mubai's. Of course, this did not mean that Chu Zhongyang's talent was above Su Mubai's. Perhaps their talents were about the same, and the only difference was their foundation. As the top genius of the Xianyuan dynasty, Chu Zhongyang's background and cultivation environment were better than Su Mubai's. It was not surprising that his foundation was better than Su Mubai's. But no matter what, Chu Zhongyang had broken Su Mubai's record. His fame was even stronger, completely overshadowing Su Mubai's. He had truly established the honor of being the top genius of the younger generation in the Xianyuan dynasty. Similarly, Chu Zhongyang also received invitations from various armies and the Zhenyuan Guard. But in the end, he chose the Shenxian army. The Shenxian army was so powerful that even the Zhenyuan Guard's Zero Guard could not compare. The Zero Guard's position in the Zhenyuan Guard was equivalent to the Shenxian army's position in the Xiantian army. Naturally, the Shenxian army and the Zero Guard also competed for Su Mubai and Chu Zhongyang, who had broken records, but the final decision was still in their hands. In the end, both Su Mubai and Chu Zhongyang chose the Shenxian army. The Zhenyuan Guard's duty was to guard the Xianyuan dynasty, find the dark forces and eliminate them. The Xiantian army's duty was to resist the void demons in the void battlefield. Comparatively speaking, the Xiantian army's casualty rate was higher because the void demons were more terrifying than the dark forces. Of course, high risk also meant high reward. There were many opportunities in the void battlefield, but whether one could encounter them and obtain them depended on one's luck and ability. It was unknown whether it was due to the stimulation of Su Mubai and Chu Zhongyang, but the peerless geniuses on the Xianyuan Saint ranking made a breakthrough and became Saint Rudiment stage powerhouses. For example, when Su Mubai broke through to the Saint Rudiment stage, his cultivation base reached the early Second Heaven Saint Rudiment stage. Chu Zhongyang also reached the early Second Heaven Saint Rudiment stage, but he was only at the peak of the early Second Heaven Saint Rudiment stage. He was only a step away from the intermediate Second Heaven Saint Rudiment stage. Yang Quan, Black Flame Swamp, Yichen Dao. The news of these people's breakthroughs also reached Chen Zong's ears. However, other than Su Mubai and Chu Zhongyang, no one else broke the original record of 200 miles of origin Qi Si, let alone the new record left by Su Mubai and Chu Zhongyang. Even so, there were still people who had condensed 200 miles of origin Qi Si, which was enough to attract the invitation of the Shenxian army and the Zero Guard. Seeing the breakthroughs one after another, Chen Zong was not in a hurry. If he wanted to break through, he had to be fully prepared. Only then could he break through in a better state. Chen Zong felt that his half-step sword intent and half-step fire intent was not far from breaking through to 50%. Moreover, he was not far from 20% of his half-step wind intent and half-step thunder intent. If he made a breakthrough in his cultivation base after breaking through, the stronger his foundation, the larger the origin Qi Si he would condense. If he kept a low profile here, he would lose the attention of the powerhouses and lose some important resources. Unless he already had a lot of resources and did not need other resources, it would not matter if he chose to keep a low profile. Half of the Sky Prides on the Xianyuan Saint board had broken through and achieved good results. Chen Zong, who was ranked 18th, naturally attracted many people's attention. However, there were no signs of him breaking through. In fact, after Chen Zong returned from the Lesser Void Realm, he had attracted a lot of attention because of the large number of Xianyuan merit points he had obtained. In particular, he had killed a void demon with king blood, which had attracted the attention of the higher-ups. As a higher-up, they were very clear about the void demon, especially the higher-ups of the Xianyuan army. Therefore, it was not an exaggeration to pay attention to a peerless Sky Pride who could kill a void demon with king blood. Time flew. In the heaven-level disciple hall, Chen Zong suddenly opened his eyes. There seemed to be a gust of wind whistling in his left eye and lightning in his right eye. Immediately, wind and lightning intertwined and merged, wreaking havoc in all directions. The 20% fusion of half-step wind intent and half-step thunder intent was successful. Perhaps it could not increase his power by much, but it increased his foundation and foundation. As for the 30% fusion, it was even more difficult and could not be done in a short period of time. Next, Chen Zong began to fuse the 50% half-step sword intent and 50% half-step fire intent with all his might. However, the difficulty of the fusion was even more difficult than the 20% half-step wind intent and 20% half-step thunder intent. In the blink of an eye, 5 days had passed. Chen Zong found an opportunity. Fusion. A terrifying half-step Dao intent aura suddenly spread out from his body and rushed in all directions. It was extremely blazing, as if it could burn everything. It was extremely sharp, as if it could tear everything apart and penetrate everything. The 50% fusion of half-step Dao intent was even more terrifying and tyrannical. It allowed Chernzong's strength to break through the original limit and take another step forward. "It's time to break through," Chernzong muttered to himself. The light in his eyes was like cold lightning and sharp swords. The best place to break through was undoubtedly the Xianyuan Tower. However, if he wanted to break through in the Xianyuan Tower, he needed to apply in advance and make arrangement. Chernzong immediately applied. As soon as Chernzong applied, it was immediately approved and a time was given. The time was 3 days later. During these 3 days there would be others who wanted to break through. It was also the last time for Chernzong to prepare. The news of Chernzong's application to break through in the Xianyuan Tower was immediately sent to the Xianyuan army and the Zhenyuan guards higher up. "He's finally breaking through. I'm looking forward to it. I wonder if he can break Chu Zhongyang's record? It'll be difficult. Chu Zhongyang's record is difficult to break." That's right. Chu Zhongyang is the #1 person among the younger generation in the Xianyuan dynasty. Chernzong is indeed outstanding, but he's still not as good as him. If it was Chu Zhongyang who encountered that miscellaneous King Blood Void Devil, he would be able to kill it. From the words of these higher-ups, it could be heard that they favored Chu Zhongyang more. If that's the case, then the Xianyuan army shouldn't have any ideas about Chernzong. "The Zhenyuan guard will nurture him well," a higher-up of the Zhenyuan guard immediately said. "Which ear did you use to hear that the Xianyuan army doesn't value Chernzong?" The Xianyuan army's expert immediately retorted. Every time a peerless genius entered their eyes, they would fight over him and attack each other's morale. Even if Chernzong isn't as good as Chu Zhongyang, he's probably not inferior to Su Mubai. He's definitely a rare peerless genius. He should join the Xianyuan army, a Xianyuan army's expert said. "No, he should join the Zero Guard." The Zero Guard's expert quickly said, "Su Mubai and Chu Zhongyang have already been recruited by you. Chernzong should belong to the Zero Guard." It's useless to say more. The final decision is still in Chernzong's hands. This was a rule personally issued by the Xianyuan dynasty's king. Everyone had to abide by it. If any faction wanted to recruit outstanding peerless geniuses, they could offer their own conditions and treatment to attract and move the other party to make a choice biased towards them. Su Mubai and Chu Zhongyang ultimately chose the Xianyuan army because of its attractiveness. In the end, who would Chernzong choose? The Xianyuan army or the Zhenyuan guard? But everything was still unknown. Everything could only be decided after Chernzong broke through in the Xianyuan Tower. Chapter 1474. The Xiankong Tower had 9 floors and a total height of 99 meters. It stood on the ground like a giant sword pointing at the sky. Every floor of the tower was 10 meters tall. 9 floors meant 90 meters. The last 9 meters were the tip of the Xiankong Tower. It was as sharp as a thorn, as if it wanted to pierce through the 9 heavens and pierce through the void. At this moment, there were many people surrounding the Xiankong Tower. They were all here to see Chernzong break through. Many gazes swept over from afar. They were the gazes of the higher-ups of the Xiantian army and the Zhenyuan guards. Killing the King Blood Void Demon was an important addition to Chernzong's life story. Naturally, it would attract the attention of many people. Chernzong bore the gaze of countless people. His expression was calm as he stepped into the Xiankong Tower. Once he entered the Xiankong Tower, Chernzong immediately felt a completely different aura fluctuation. It was very mysterious. The floor of the Xiankong Tower was covered with many veined patterns. There were also many veined patterns on the walls. The veined patterns crisscrossed, forming a very complicated and mysterious pattern. It was as if they were a whole. When Chen Zong walked down the stairs to the second floor, he realized that the veined patterns extended from the first floor. They were like vines growing all the way to the third floor. The Xiankong Tower had 9 floors. When one applied to use the Xiankong Tower to break through, the allocation would be based on one's ability and battle record. One could break through on the first floor, the second floor, or the higher floors. The higher the floor, the better the effect. Chen Zong's application was approved to the highest floor, the 9th floor. For example, Su Mubai and Chu Zhongyang also broke through on the 9th floor. Of course, breaking through on the 9th floor and the first floor did not affect the size of the primordial Qi. It did not affect the size of the primordial Qi. It only allowed one to absorb the power of the primordial Qi faster and make a breakthrough faster. Soon, Chen Zong stepped into the 9th floor. The ceiling of the 9th floor was not completely covered. There were 8 transparent water droplets that allowed one to see the sky. There were no clouds in the sky. It was a vast expanse of blue. It was deep and boundless, as if it could contain everything. The earth, the common people. Taking a deep breath, Chen Zong felt that the aura here was extremely pure and fresh. It went straight to his heart. He felt refreshed inside and out, and even his mind became clearer and calmer. Chen Zong exhaled and cleared his mind of all distracting thoughts. He began to cultivate. The 15th level of the Grand Profound Origin art circulated faster and faster, and the 9 spirit wheels in his body revolved at an astonishing speed. They had reached their limits and were about to break through again. After maintaining this state for 15 minutes, countless amounts of heaven and earth yuan qi surged in from all directions. The runes in the Xiankong Tower began to light up from the first level and quickly spread to the second level, the third level, and finally the 9th level. Worldly anomalies began to appear. Whistling sounds could be heard as strong winds blew from all directions, bringing with them countless amounts of heaven and earth yuan qi. It's starting. Outside the Xiankong Tower, everyone looked up at the sky with anticipation. The heaven and earth essence qi began to turn into mist. Following that, it became even denser. Like flowing water, it rushed out and condensed above the Xiankong Tower. A sea of yuan qi began to condense. Once it was formed, it was 10 miles wide. However, with Chen Zong's talent, it was normal for him to be able to condense a sea of yuan qi that was comparable to the highest limit of a cultivator's breakthrough. A 5-kilometer yuan qi sea did not cause anyone to be surprised. Shortly after, the yuan qi sea slowly rotated, unceasingly absorbing the yuan qi of heaven and earth that surged in from all directions, unceasingly expanding itself at a speed of 1 kilometer per breath. In the blink of an eye, 10 miles became 20 miles, and then it quickly became 30 miles. Not long after, the sea of yuan qi reached 100 miles. This did not surprise anyone. It was within their expectations. With Chen Zong's talent, the sea of yuan qi he condensed would definitely not be less than 150 miles. As for how many miles it would reach beyond that, it was difficult to estimate. Soon, the sea of yuan qi broke through 150 miles. Following that, it reached 160 miles. Everyone's hearts were in their mouths. Right now, the larger the sea of yuan qi, the higher Chen Zong's talent was. The more solid his foundation was, the smoother his cultivation would be after his breakthrough. 170 miles. Not bad. The higher-ups of the Black Heaven Army secretly nodded. Such a result was indeed very good. Moreover, the sea of yuan qi was still constantly absorbing the heaven and earth yuan qi. It had not stopped expanding. 180 miles. The growth rate of the sea of yuan qi had not decreased, which meant that it would continue to expand. 190 miles. Immediately, many of the higher-ups smiled. The higher the talent and potential Chen Zong showed, the better it was for them. They were not afraid of the high but were not afraid of the low. After all, the Black Heaven Army was facing internal and external troubles. Internal troubles were the dark forces. The external threat was the Void Fiend. Therefore, the more prodigies and experts there were in the Black Heaven army, the better. 200 miles. Immediately, everyone laughed. They were all surprised. Although there were two peerless prodigies who had broken the record, Su Mubai and Chu Zhongyang, 200 miles was still a natural moat for many people. Now, another peerless prodigy had reached this natural moat. 200 miles. The higher-ups of the Xunxian army and the Zero Guards smiled. Such a result was enough for them to make up their minds to recruit Chen Zong with generous conditions. However, the expansion of the Sea of Yuan-Chi did not stop. Immediately, everyone's hearts were filled with anticipation. How many miles would it reach in the end? Would it reach Su Mubai's 210 miles? Or would it reach Chu Zhongyang's 220 miles? As for breaking Chu Zhongyang's record, in everyone's opinion, that was an impossible task. It was also impossible for Chen Zong to catch up with Chu Zhongyang. 210 miles. Immediately there was an uproar. Like Su Mubai, Chen Zong is also from the realm of mystic underworld, someone suddenly exclaimed. The realm of mystic underworld was a remote place for the Black Heaven army. If the Black Heaven army was compared to a big city, then the realm of mystic underworld was like a small town or even a village far away from the big city. The difference between the two was huge. Su Mubai and Chen Zong were prodigies who came from small towns and villages. Their inheritance and environment could not be compared to the prodigies of the Black Heaven army. However, they had achieved astonishing results, which shocked countless people. The realm of mystic underworld could produce such amazing prodigies. For a time, the words realm of mystic underworld were deeply engraved in people's hearts. Many people were extremely curious, and some even wanted to go and take a look. However, that was a story for another time. 210 miles. It did not stop, but its speed had slowed down. However, it was still absorbing the chi of heaven and earth from all directions and constantly expanding. The expansion of every mile was not obvious compared to 210 miles. However, everyone had extraordinary eyesight and could see it. Gradually, the size of the chi sea approached 220 miles. Everyone was dumbfounded. Could Chen Zong catch up with Chu Zhongyang? Was he the dark horse that had hidden himself the deepest? It was hard to imagine, and they did not dare to believe it. 220 miles. The chi sea that Chen Zong condensed had reached 220 miles. Instantly, everyone was in a daze. The high-level experts were also shocked. It was unexpected. It was completely unexpected. Those who were certain that Chen Zong was inferior to Chu Zhongyang were all stunned. Their minds seemed to have frozen. The chi sea is still expanding. Suddenly, someone screamed. Indeed, after the chi sea reached 220 miles, it did not completely stop expanding. It was still slowly rotating, slowly absorbing the chi of heaven and earth to expand itself. After 10 breaths, the chi sea expanded by another mile. Everyone's eyes widened as they stared. An expansion of 1 mile had already surpassed Chu Zhongyang's record. It was a new record. 222 miles. 223 miles. Expand. 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 228 miles. 229 miles. 230 miles. The Sea of Vitality completely attracted everyone's attention. When it reached 230 miles, the chi sea's rotation became even slower. Gradually, it stopped absorbing the chi of heaven and earth. 230 miles. The experts gasped. It was completely unexpected. Not only did it break Chu Zhongyang's record, but it also had a deeper meaning. After all, Chen Zong's background was far inferior to Chu Zhongyang's. Did this mean that Chen Zong's talent and potential were much better than Chu Zhongyang's? If Chen Zong's background was the same as Chu Zhongyang's, would the chi sea he condensed be even larger? All of this was unknown. But no matter what, Chen Zong's condensed chi sea of 230 miles had completely broken Chu Zhongyang's record. It had created a new record, enough to shake the Xianyuan dynasty. Inside the Xiankong Tower, Chernzong was completely immersed in the breakthrough. The Qi Sea of 230 miles began to rotate again, faster and faster. It began to compress and condense inwards. Traces of Qi of heaven and earth were born in the Qi Sea, gradually spreading out. The Qi Sea was compressed and condensed at a speed visible to the naked eye. The Qi of heaven and earth became denser and more dazzling. 200 miles. 190 miles. Soon, the Qi Sea was compressed to within 100 miles. It continued to compress. Finally, the Qi Sea was compressed to 10 miles. The Qi of heaven and earth was terrifyingly pure. The compression ratio was 23:1. It was another new record. An incomparably pure ray of light condensed in the center of the Qi Sea. It was like a heavenly sword descending from the sky. Its speed was astonishing and its power was terrifying. Chernzong, who was inside the Xiankong Tower, could not move at all. The Qi of heaven and earth hit the tip of the tower. The Xiankong Tower seemed to tremble slightly. Soon after, the tyrannical power was dispersed throughout the entire tower. Then, through the patterns on the tower, it quickly spread out to the center of the 9th floor and entered Chernzong's body. The grand profundity art started to circulate madly as it ceaselessly absorbed the extremely pure origin energy that surged into his body. Under the impact of this extremely terrifying energy, the 9 spiritual wheels gradually collapsed and shattered, transforming into the purest energy. Soon after, in the Qi Sea, the power of the shattered spirit wheels mixed with the pure Qi of heaven and earth and condensed once again. Gradually, it formed the outline of a vortex, and the speed of absorption increased in an instant. Condense. Chernzong's aura gradually became stronger and stronger. It spread out and suppressed everything in all directions. Chapter 1475. After thousands of trials and tribulations, Little Rice Dumpling has finally broken through to the Saint Realm. Let's throw some flowers to celebrate. A few Union Masters won't be too few, and a few Supremes won't be too many. Hehehe. In the Transcendent Realm, one would condense a spirit wheel. One spirit wheel would form a total of 9 spirit wheels. However, the Saint Realm was different. In order to break through from the Transcendent Realm to the Saint Realm, one would first need to shatter 9 spirit wheels and convert them into pure energy. Then, they would condense them using a Saint-grade secret art to condense them into a Saint Vortex. The first-level Saint Rudiment stage had 1 Saint Spiral, the second-level Saint Rudiment stage had 2 Saint Spirals, 1 innermost and 1 outer. The third-level Saint Rudiment stage had 3 Saint Spirals, 1 innermost, 1 middle, and 1 outer. The 9th Heaven Saint Realm required 9 Saint Vortexes, 1 from the inside to the outside. The Saint Vortex was located in the Qi Sea. In Chernzong's Qi Sea, a Saint Vortex that was almost white in color was constantly rotating. The white color was due to the Great Mystery Art. If one cultivated a fire attribute secret art, the Saint Vortex condensed would be red in color. The Dexian Yuan technique was considered mediocre among top Saint-grade cultivation methods, so the Saint Whirlpool it condensed was rather ordinary compared to other top Saint-grade cultivation methods. Of course, it was much more condensed when compared to lower, middle, and upper Saint-grade cultivation method. The size of the Saint Vortex was related to the level of the secret art. The density of the Saint Vortex was related to the level of the secret art. The sea of elemental energy turned into rays of elemental energy that shot down from the sky. Then, from all directions, it poured into Chernzong's body and into the Saint Vortex. Breakthrough. The 16th stage of the Great Mystery Art. In an instant, the Saint Vortex in his Qi Sea became more and more condensed. Chernzong's cultivation continued to rise. Early First Heaven Saint Realm. Mid First Heaven Saint Realm. Late First Heaven Saint Realm. Peak First Heaven Saint Realm. Peak First Heaven Saint Realm. The Saint Vortex spun rapidly, constantly absorbing pure Yuan Qi. Gradually, a second Saint Vortex began to condense around the first. Early Second Heaven Saint Realm. Immediately, the second Saint Vortex and Chen Zong's cultivation continued to rise. Mid-Second Heaven Saint Realm. When Chen Zong's cultivation reached the Mid-Second Heaven Saint Realm, the pure Yuan Qi and the Yuan Qi Sea disappeared completely. It had been completely absorbed by Chen Zong. At the same time, the Heart Sword Seal, which had been dormant all this time, shuddered and released a ray of light. A vague figure appeared, as though it was stepping out of thin air. Inside the Xiankong Tower, Chen Zong circulated the Dexian Yuan art over and over again, constantly consolidating his recent breakthrough. Breaking through from the peak of the half-step Saint Realm to the mid-Second Heaven Saint Realm was equivalent to breaking through several small realms. Chen Zong needed time to adapt to his new strength. The Great Mystic Origin Saint Force from the 16th level of the Great Mystic Formula was pure, majestic, and powerful. 230 miles of Origin Qi Si, a ratio of 23:1, and his cultivation has broken through to the mid-Second Heaven Saint Realm. Everyone sucked in a cold breath. Every single one of them broke Chu Zhongyang's new record, achieving a brand new record. When Chen Zong stepped out of the Xiankong Tower after consolidating his cultivation, numerous gazes landed on him. Those gazes were filled with shock and envy. It was as though they wanted to drown Chen Zong. Faced with this, Chen Zong remained calm. After breaking through to the Saint Realm, not only had his body undergone a complete transformation, but his mind had also undergone a transformation. It was slowly improving, allowing him to face everything better. However, Chen Zong didn't have the time to properly digest these changes. Right now, he planned to return to the Heaven-Rank Disciple Hall in the Profound Origin Palace and enter seclusion for a period of time. He wanted to properly adjust to his new realm and cultivation. This period of time was of the utmost importance. Because his cultivation and realm had just ushered in a huge breakthrough, his body and mind had been affected, and it had begun to improve rapidly. This period was the time when one's potential was most active. It was also the time when it was easiest to improve after a breakthrough. During this period, one's strength would be significantly improved, which was very important. Whether it was the Profound Heaven Army or the Zhen Yuan Guard, they had already made up their minds to recruit Chen Zong. However, they didn't directly approach Chen Zong. Instead, they sent their own conditions to Chen Zong. Without a doubt, the main competitors were the Profound Heaven Army and the Zhen Yuan Guard's Zero Guard. Both of their conditions were very attractive. However, Chen Zong had already made up his mind. Therefore, he didn't hesitate and quickly responded. The Profound God Army. After making his choice, Chen Zong immediately went into seclusion. Time was of the essence, and he couldn't afford to waste it. If the Foundation Establishment Realm was the starting point for an ordinary person to grasp power, then from the Foundation Establishment Realm to the Transcendent Realm was the sublimation of one's self. One would grasp extraordinary power and truly stand above ordinary people. From the Transcendent Realm to the Saint Realm, it was a true transformation of one's life. It was a transformation from one's body to one's soul. When one broke through from the Foundation Establishment Realm to the Transcendent Realm, there would be a period of time when one's potential would be active. Then, when one broke through from the Transcendent Realm to the Saint Realm, there would also be a period of time when one's potential would be active, and it would be even stronger than when one stepped into the Transcendent Realm. Of course, the length of this period was closely related to the individual. Generally speaking, the higher one's potential was, the longer the period of time. Su Mu Bai and Chu Zhongyang didn't know about the news of Chen Zong's breakthrough because they were in seclusion. Chen Zong's seclusion seemed to be peaceful, but in fact, it wasn't. The outside world had already turned upside down because of Chen Zong's record. When they learned that Chen Zong's breakthrough was actually better than Chu Zhongyang's, their first reaction was disbelief, thinking that they had misheard. However, after receiving confirmation, they still found it hard to believe. Some people who worshipped Chu Zhongyang found it hard to accept. Chu Zhongyang was the #1 genius of the younger generation in the profound Yuan dynasty. How could there be someone more outstanding than him? Moreover, it was someone who came from a remote place. Whether they believed it or not, the truth wouldn't change. The news of Chen Zong choosing the Divine Dark Army also spread, causing the Zhen Yuan guards and the Zero guards to feel extremely regretful. Such a peerless genius would definitely have great achievements in the future. Unfortunately, he didn't choose the Zero guards, but the Divine Dark Army. This was already the third peerless genius to choose the Divine Dark Army recently. If it weren't for the king's order, even if they had to tie him up, they would have brought Chen Zong back to the Zero guards. No matter what happened in the outside world, Chen Zong had been recuperating in the disciple hall, developing his potential and transforming it into strength. Transformation. The transformation of the body, the transformation of the soul, the transformation of the level of life. It was as if he had transformed from a low level to a high level. Chen Zong was completely silent and undisturbed. He was fully focused on experiencing his own transformation. The transformation from the body to the transformation of the soul was a wonderful feeling. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Chen Zong also began to comprehend. He decided to put aside his cultivation for the time being. Because of his active potential, it was not mainly reflected in his cultivation. If he used this period of time to cultivate and improve his cultivation, it was also possible. His cultivation would definitely improve. But relatively speaking, it would be a waste. Therefore, Chen Zong used this opportunity to comprehend the half-step Tao intent. Comprehend. Cultivate. There was no time to waste. Time passed by unknowingly. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. Those geniuses who had broken through before were still in seclusion. After that, many geniuses also broke through as if they were stimulated. After breaking through, they immediately went into seclusion. A month. Another month passed. Time flowed like water. Half a year had passed, and the geniuses who were in seclusion came out one after another. Their cultivation had completely stabilized, and their auras had completely changed. What? Su Mubai actually broke the record and condensed a 210 miles origin qi? As expected of Chu Zhongyang, the #1 genius of the Xianyuan dynasty. Su Mubai can't be compared to him at all. What? Chu Zhongyang's record has been broken. Chen Zong. It's actually him. The geniuses who came out of seclusion were extremely shocked. First, it was news of Su Mubai, then news of Chu Zhongyang, and finally news of Chen Zong. It was like a heavy blow to their minds. The feeling of surpassing their limits again and again was very uncomfortable. When Su Mubai and Chu Zhongyang came out of seclusion one after another and heard the news, their first reaction was disbelief. Su Mubai was not familiar with Chen Zong, but he knew that Chen Zong came from the mystic underworld territory with him. This person was inconspicuous at the beginning, but his subsequent performance had exceeded his expectations time and time again. He did not expect that the biggest surprise would be this. He had actually broken his and Chu Zhongyang's records. How interesting! A smile involuntarily appeared on Su Mubai's face. There seemed to be a flash of pure white in his pitch-black eyes. He did not feel jealous because Chen Zong had broken his record and performed better than him. Instead, he felt even more competitive. Chu Zhongyang's reaction after he heard the news was different from Su Mubai's. He frowned deeply. He was the top genius of the mystic underworld dynasty. This honor and title had been on his head for many years. It had long become a fact, as if it was a decree of the heavens. Chu Zhongyang also thought so from the bottom of his heart. No one in the younger generation could compare to him. Even many of the older generation could not compare to him in terms of talent. One day, he would definitely surpass everyone and achieve unparalleled achievements. No one could compare to him. Chu Zhongyang looked like he did not care about others. However, he was actually arrogant and looked down on others. Therefore, he did not care about others because no one could threaten his position. However, it was different now. Someone had actually broken his record. No matter how this person broke his record, it would affect his position. Chunzong. Chu Zhongyang could not help but mutter. He vaguely remembered that during the Mystic Underworld War, he had killed his opponent with just a finger. However, now, his opponent had surpassed him in breaking through to the Saint Realm. He was shocked and could not allow this to happen. Now, there were even rumors that Chunzong was the real top genius of the Mystic Underworld dynasty. How could that be possible? Chu Zhongyang's frown relaxed. His face was cold, and his eyes looked more and more empty. He ignored everything and seemed to encompass everything. Chunzong. These two words once again rang out from Chu Zhongyang's mouth. The awe-inspiring tone within them reverberated endlessly within the great hall. Some of the geniuses who had broken through this time chose to join the Mystic Underworld army, while others chose to join the Zhen Yuan Guards. Now that they had come out of seclusion, they naturally had to report to the Mystic Underworld army and the Zhen Yuan Guards to officially become a member and contribute their strength to the stability and prosperity of the Mystic Underworld dynasty. Chapter 1476. After 9 months, Chunzong finally came out of seclusion. As soon as Chunzong came out of seclusion, someone immediately came to pick him up. Now that Chunzong was a Saint Realm Master, he automatically left his identity as a disciple of Profound Yuan Palace and went to the place he had chosen. Profound Sky Army. Divine Dark Army. The Profound Sky Army was the largest and strongest army in the Profound Yuan dynasty. Its barracks were not built in the Profound Yuan dynasty but in a mountain range. This mountain range was named the Profound Sky Mountain Range and stretched for hundreds of thousands of miles. The Profound Sky Army's barracks were located in the mountain range and occupied a large area. When Chunzong arrived on the Xian Ming flying dragon, looking down from the sky, he could see a large area of colorful light rippling like water. That was the power of the formation. It was a big formation that was in operation. This spirit array is called the 9 Revolution Profound Sky Dust Particle Array. It's the most powerful spirit array in our Profound Sky Army. It consists of 9 large spirit arrays that are linked together. Each large spirit array has 9 medium spirit arrays, and each medium spirit array has 9 small spirit arrays. They are closely connected and have no flaws. Minze, the divine dark soldier who received Chunzong, said to Chunzong with a smile. The 9 Revolution Profound Sky Dust Particle Array. Chunzong pondered. This name gave off a very powerful feeling. Chunzong had not studied spirit arrays, but he knew the basic. Strictly speaking, spirit arrays could be divided into 4 scales: super large, large, medium, and small. The larger the scale of a spirit array, the more powerful it was, and the more difficult it was to set up and break. The 9 Revolutions Arcane Dust Atomic Formation was a super large-scale formation that covered an extremely wide area. It was estimated to cover 100,000 kilometers. This super large-scale formation was formed by 9 large-scale formations, 81 medium-scale formations, and 729 small-scale formations that were tightly linked together without any gaps. If the 9 revolving heavenly dust grand array is fully activated, the energy consumption is astonishing. However, its strength is enough to withstand the attack of a great saint powerhouse for a short time and trap and kill a half-step great saint powerhouse. Minze spoke frankly. This was not a secret. Since Chunzong had also joined the Xiantian army and was a member of the Xunxian army, he had the right to know this. However, under normal circumstances, only 1/10 of the 9 revolution Xiantian dust formation will be activated to reduce the energy consumption and maintain the same level of recovery. Even if it's only 1/10 of its power, it will still be able to withstand the attack of a half-step Great Saint expert. Furthermore, it will be able to fully activate its power in an extremely short period of time. It could be said that with such a large defensive and killing formation, the Xiantian army was extremely stable and difficult to attack unless it was broken from the inside. In order to enter the 9 revolutions mystical dust formation, one's identity had to be verified. It was very strict to prevent people from the dark forces from sneaking in and disrupting the operation of the formation. Min Zhe's identity had been verified, and so did Chen Zong's. Only after passing the verification would they be allowed to enter. If they tried to force their way in, they would be killed. The Xiantian army has a total of 9 armies. They are the Mingxian army, Wangxian army, Tianxian army, Taixin army, Longxian army, Zhanshuan army, Aoshuan army, Hunxian army, and the Xunxian army. Our Xunxian army has the least number of people, but every one of us is the best of the best. The Tianxian army is ranked second. Although our Xunxian army is the most elite, the other 8 armies are actually not bad compared to our Xunxian army because they have more people. Among them, there is no lack of outstanding peerless geniuses who are comparable to our Xunxian army. Min Zhe led Chen Zong to the camp of the Xunxian army as he introduced the structure of the Xiantian army to Chen Zong. After passing through many tents, they finally stepped into the main camp of the Xunxian army. A huge black tent covered with golden lines was right in front of them. Chen Zong felt an indescribably powerful aura that made him feel even more oppressed. It was as though a terrifying primordial fierce beast was sleeping in the tent. "Let's go. The army commander is waiting for you inside," Min Zhe said solemnly. Outside the tent, there were 2 soldiers standing on each side of the tent. They had long sabers at their waists and were clad in black armor with golden lines. They gave off a mysterious feeling. Terrifying aura fluctuations emanated from their bodies. It was as though they had been through hundreds of battles. They were like divine sabers that had returned to their scabbards. Mastery Saint Rudiment Stage. 7th Level Saint Rudiment Stage. Chen Zong was astonished that the 2 of them were actually experts of this level. 7th Level Saint Rudiment Stage powerhouses were actually here as guards. It seemed like there were countless powerhouses in the Xunxian army. Chen Zong took a deep breath to calm his mind, and then he immediately strode out and followed Min Zhe towards the tent. However, at this instant, 2 extremely sharp gazes that seemed capable of penetrating everything descended onto him in unison, and these gazes contained a strong sense of warning. If he insisted on going forward, it was very likely that they would attack him. Min Zhe and Chen Zong stopped in their tracks. "I am Senior Sergeant Min Zhe. I am here on the orders of the army commander to bring Xunxian army recruit Chen Zong to pay a visit to the army commander," Min Zhe said solemnly. The Xiantian army was divided into rank. They were sergeant, general, and army commander. The difference in military rank was the difference in status, and also the difference in treatment. Of course, there was no absolute relationship between rank and strength, but there was a close relationship. For example, a senior sergeant might not be stronger than a junior sergeant, but in most cases, a senior sergeant would definitely be stronger than a junior sergeant. After all, it was not easy to raise one's rank. Not only did it take time, but it also required one's own efforts to earn merit points. Merit points could not be obtained by just sitting and waiting. One had to put in effort and experience life and death situations. In this way, one's own strength would also be improved and become stronger. "Wait," one of the guards said coldly. Then, he turned around and entered the tent. Not long after, he came out again and opened a corner of the tent. "At the same time," he said, "the army commander summons you." "Let's go," Minze took a deep breath and said to Chenzong. He then stepped forward. Chenzong seemed to be affected by the atmosphere. He took a deep breath and his face became solemn. The corner of the tent seemed to be the entrance to an abyss. Chenzong could not help but feel dignified. Minze stepped into the tent first and disappeared in front of Chenzong. It was as if he had merged into the darkness. Chenzong followed him in. In front of him was a dazzling light. He could not look directly at it. However, the light only lasted for a moment and then disappeared. Chenzong saw the inside of the tent. It was huge. It was very spacious. A figure sat on the seat of the host. He was extraordinarily tall and wore black-colored armor with golden markings that were like fire. Not only was he mysterious, he was peerlessly mighty, and as he sat there, he emitted an aura that was powerful and heavy like a primeval mountain and boundless and deep like the sky. An expert. An extremely terrifying expert. At first glance, Chenzong felt a sense of awe. But then, he vaguely sensed his level. Half-step Great Saint. The army commander of Xinxian was a half-step Great Saint expert. The army commander of Xinxian opened his eyes and shot out an unparalleled divine light. The divine light was like a flash of lightning in the darkness. It passed through Minze and fell on Chenzong. Chenzong's heart tightened as if he had been seen through. However, Chenzong's expression did not change at all. He was calm and composed. After breaking through to the Saint realm, not only did one's cultivation base and realm improve, but one's body and soul had also undergone a transformation. The aura exuding from one's body came from the deepest part of one's heart and soul. It was completely different from before. If Chenzong had not broken through, he might have felt nervous facing the army commander's gaze. But now, he could face it calmly. This was his foundation and confidence. Under his gaze, Chenzong could remain calm and composed. The army commander of Xinchuan's expression did not change, but he was somewhat certain in his heart. There were several generals sitting on the left and right of the army commander of Xinxian. They were the higher-ups of the army commander of Xinxian. All of them were looking at Chenzong. Chenzong was a name that reverberated like thunder in their ears. When he broke through, his yuan qi si had been compressed to a ratio of 23:1. Once he broke through, his cultivation base had soared to mid-second heaven saint realm. All of this had turned Chenzong into a legend. It had also caused the Black Sky Army and the Jinyuan garrison to fight over him. The army commander of Xinxian had also offered generous conditions. Although the army commander of Xinxian was the strongest among the 9 armies of the Black Sky Army, the combined strength of the other 8 armies was not much different. Therefore, 4 peerless geniuses like Su Mubai, Chu Zhongyang, and Chenzong, who had broken the record, they naturally had to be recruited. When they grew up, the army commander of Xinxian would become even stronger. Su Mubai, Chu Zhongyang, and Chenzong were all offered very generous conditions by the army commander of Xinxian. Among them, Chenzong was the most generous. After all, the Jinyuan garrison, especially the Zero Guard, had offered very generous conditions to recruit Chenzong. If the army commander of Xinxian wanted to attract Chenzong, their conditions would not be inferior to the Zero Guards. Sharp and domineering gazes were focused on Chenzong, but he did not feel any pressure. Instead, he faced them calmly, which made Minze sigh inwardly. Late stage Second Heaven Saint Realm. Not bad. The army commander of Xinchuan's eyes retracted as he nodded inwardly. There was a trace of admiration in his voice. When Chenzong had broken through, his cultivation had been at the mid-stage Second Heaven Saint Realm. He had not yet reached the peak of the mid-stage Second Heaven Saint Realm. However, after 9 months, he had reached the late-stage Second Heaven Saint Realm. This speed was not considered fast for peerless geniuses. However, there was one thing that could not be ignored. 9 months was the period when one's potential was most active. Increasing one's cultivation was the weakest part. If Chernzong had used the 9 months to cultivate, based on the talent and potential he had displayed, he should have been able to reach the peak of the second level, or even the limit of the second level. However, right now, he was only at the late-stage second heaven saint realm. The increase in his cultivation was only incidental. The real improvement was in other aspects. However, one's cultivation was also the easiest to discern. As for other aspects, it was very difficult to discern. In fact, it was even difficult to sense. Chapter 1477. The Spirit Xian camp was huge, and seemed to contain its own world. The Spirit Xian army's general and the other generals all looked at Chernzong. They stared at Chernzong. Minze also stared at Chernzong, waiting to see what Chernzong had to say. 1 breakthrough and 9 months of closed-door cultivation. What level had Chernzong reached? General, I'm cultivating the 17th level of the Great Mystery Formula. I'm at the late second heaven saint realm, Chernzong said calmly. Everyone was familiar with the Great Mystery Formula. It was a top-grade saint-grade cultivation method for ordinary people. Many prodigies cultivated this cultivation method. Being able to cultivate it to the 17th level right after breaking through to the saint realm was no small matter. It meant that he had cultivated it to the 14th or 15th level before breaking through. After breaking through, it was normal for him to break through 2 levels at once with the help of his active potential. If he wanted to break through the next level of his cultivation technique, it would not be so easy. However, the purity of the great mystic saint power cultivated from the 17th level of the great mystic formula was also extremely shocking. Compared to his Azura clone, Chen Xiu, it was a pity that Chen Xiu had broken through in an ordinary environment. If he had broken through in an environment similar to the mysterious Void Tower, it would have been even more amazing. Of course, even if Chen Xiu had broken through in the mysterious Void Tower, the effect would not have been as good as Chen Xiu's original body because it was composed of fiendish qi. The burning evil Azura skill not only required the world's origin energy to cultivate, but also fiendish qi. Where did the fiendish qi come from? Killing was one of the sources of fiendish qi. In addition, there were some special environments. It was because of the lack of fiendish qi that Chen Xiu's cultivation had been slow to improve. Now, Chen Xiu's cultivation had surpassed his clones. High-grade sword intent, first-grade fire intent, first-grade thunder intent, first-grade sword intent, first-grade sword intent, first-grade sword intent, Chernzong continued. As for the Wind Dao intent, Chernzong had chosen to hide it. Although he wanted to show off and attract enough attention, he could not reveal it completely. Everyone was even more surprised when they heard Chernzong's report. All 3 Dao intents were first grade, and one of them had even reached the high grade. It was indeed good. 50% of the fusion of sword intent and fire intent, Chernzong said again. Earlier, after he'd fused half-step sword intent and half-step fire intent to 50% and broke through into true Dao insights, their might had increased greatly. But because he had the foundation of fusing half-step Dao insights, Chernzong had once again fused them to attain the 50% level within 9 months of time. Hearing Chernzong's words, everyone nodded silently. For a peerless genius who had just broken through, such results were indeed very shocking. Very good. Satisfied. After this, you can go to the Saint Weapon Mound and choose any Saint Weapon, said the Spirit Xian General. This was one of the conditions he had given to Chernzong. The Sacred Weapon Mound was a place where countless sacred weapons were stored. Some of those sacred weapons were new, while others were left behind by powerful seniors. They were extraordinary. Not everyone was qualified to enter the Saint Weapon Mound to choose a Saint Weapon. 10 mysterious Spirit Essence Dawn will be delivered to you very soon. The mysterious God Army Chief spoke again. The mysterious Spirit Essence Dawn were a kind of cultivation pill within the Divine Xian Army. It contained incomparably pure and majestic yuan qi that could be refined and absorbed to improve one's cultivation. It was said that one of the main ingredients to refine the mysterious spirit essence, dawn, could only be obtained in the void battlefield. It was extremely valuable, and usually, only generals were qualified to obtain it. As for sergeants, they would only be rewarded if they had made a great contribution. Chernzong was a newcomer to the Divine Xian army, so it was amazing that he could obtain 10 mysterious spirit essence dawn at once. Minze was envious. He had once obtained a mysterious spirit essence dawn, and after consuming it, his cultivation had broken through from the peak of the 6th Heaven Saint realm to the 7th Heaven Saint realm. Of course, he was able to break through because he had been accumulating yuan qi at the peak of the 6th Heaven Saint realm for a long time. With the help of the mysterious spirit essence dawn, he was able to break through the shackles of the 6th Heaven Saint realm. Although it wasn't all due to the mysterious spirit essence dawn, it accounted for at least half of it. The 3 mysterious spirit enlightenment dawn are still in the process of being refined. They can only be given to you after a while, the Divine Xian army chief said again. The mysterious spirit enlightenment dawn were a kind of treasure dawn that could increase one's comprehension in a short period of time. Its effects were extraordinary and extremely precious. The materials needed to refine it were also very rare, and 3 of them could only be found in the void battlefield. Thus, the value of the Spirit Mystical Enlightenment Dan was extremely high, far surpassing the Spirit Mystical Profound Essence Dan. The majority of the Spirit Mystical Army might not even be able to obtain one in tens or even hundreds of years, but Chernzong was able to obtain 3 in one go. Minze was envious. He had been in the Divine Xian army for several decades, but he had never seen a mysterious spirit enlightenment dawn before, let alone possess one. However, Chernzong had obtained 3 of them at once. Although he didn't obtain them immediately, it was still very shocking. Chernzong didn't know much about the mysterious spirit enlightenment dawn, but the conditions given to him at that time had moved Chernzong and attracted Chernzong. A saint weapon from the saint weapon tomb. 10 mysterious spirit essence dawn. 3 mysterious spirit enlightenment dawn. That day, the Divine Xian army of the Divine Xian army had given many recruitment conditions. In addition to these 3 conditions, Chernzong could also choose a Tao Will Stone and obtain a place to enter the desolate ancient mystery land. The so-called Tao Will Stone was actually an upgrade of a Tao Charm Stone. In other words, a Tao Charm Stone was a low-grade Tao Will Stone, while a Tao Will Stone was a high-grade one. The Tao Charm aura contained within was so dense that it directly transformed into Tao Will. Using it to comprehend Tao Will was 10 times more effective than using a Tao Charm Stone. Therefore, the value of a Tao Will Stone far exceeded that of a Tao Charm Stone. It wasn't as simple as 10 times, but 100 times more. As for the last place to enter the desolate ancient mystery land, according to the introduction, it was very precious. Once one entered, there was hope to obtain great benefit. It could be said to be the most valuable of all the conditions. However, the desolate ancient mystery land hadn't opened yet, so it couldn't be used in a short period of time. However, the mysterious spirit essence dawn were enough to allow Chernzong's cultivation to advance by leaps and bounds in a short period of time. Moreover, it wouldn't leave any side effects. As for the mysterious spirit enlightenment dawn, they could enhance Chernzong's comprehension for a short period of time. Chernzong had already experienced the effects of enhancing his comprehension several times, so he was very clear about it. The effect of the mysterious spirit enlightenment dawn would probably be better and stronger than the treasures that he had obtained in the past that temporarily enhanced his comprehension. Chernzong was also looking forward to the Saint Weapon Tomb. Now that he was at the Saint Rudiment stage, the gilded heavy mountain sword could no longer display its strength. He needed to change to a Saint Grade sword. He might be able to find a satisfactory sword in the Saint Weapon Tomb. As for the Tao Will Stone, Chunzong had to consider it carefully. Now that he had the Wind Dao Charm Stone, although it couldn't be compared to the Dao Will Stone, it was still helpful for him to comprehend the Wind Dao Will. Then, the Dao Will Stone should be chosen from the three directions of sword, fire, and lightning. His Heart Sword Dao Will belonged to the Advanced Dao Will category, and it was the Heart Sword. Heart and Sword, so the Sword Dao Will Stone's effect on the Heart Sword Dao Will would probably be mediocre. Moreover, he still had the last two tribulations of the three tribulations sharpening that he had yet to cultivate. Then, the Dao Will Stone would have to choose between fire and lightning. Without much hesitation, Chunzong made his choice. The Fire Dao Will Stone. Because for now, his Heart Sword Dao Will and Fire Dao Will had fused by 50%. The Fire Dao Will Stone could help him comprehend the Fire Dao Will, and there was even a chance that it could advance to the Intermediate Dao Will. In this way, the power of the fused Dao Will would be even stronger and increase his strength. Chunzong, although your talent and potential are outstanding, our Divine Dark Army has always been fair. However, we will give you more preferential treatment. What do you want? Strive for it yourself, the Divine Dark Army commander said seriously. Those preferential conditions from before were naturally to compete for Chunzong. Now that Chunzong was a member of the Divine Dark Army, everything had to be done according to their rules. Chunzong expressed his understanding. Otherwise, without clear rules, the Divine Dark Army wouldn't be able to survive for long. It would have fallen apart long ago. Now, Chunzong was a new recruit in the Divine Dark Army. He was a low-ranked soldier with no military experience and no military contributions. He was a pure newbie. Our Divine Dark Army is divided into three divisions: the Combat Division, the Defense Division, and the Assassination Division. The Combat Division is responsible for offense, the Defense Division is responsible for defense and containment, and the Assassination Division is responsible for killing. Which division do you choose? General, please allow me to understand the situation before making a decision. Chunzong thought for a moment and replied. Allow. The Divine Dark Army commander said, Go to the Saint Weapon Mound to choose a Saint Weapon. I'll give you a month. After a month, as a new recruit, you'll enter the Void Battleground to complete a mission. Minze then led Chunzong out of the tent. After leaving the tent, Chunzong naturally asked Minze about the mission. Minze also told him everything he knew. The mission was actually a kind of ceremony, a baptism. Although Chunzong's talent and potential surpassed many and could be said to be the best of his generation, in the end, fighting against the void demons didn't rely on talent and potential, but strength. Talent and potential needed time to be converted into strength. Moreover, some people had great talent and potential, but they weren't good at fighting. Moreover, recruiting Chunzong with such generous conditions had already caused dissatisfaction among many in the army. After all, they had fought countless life and death battles to get to where they were. Therefore, the ceremony was necessary. Only by completing the ceremony could one be considered to have truly integrated into the Shunxian army and be recognized by the other members. Hearing Minze's words, Chunzong couldn't help but nod. He didn't have any objections. Next, Chunzong naturally went to the Saint Weapon Mound to choose a suitable Saint Weapon for himself. However, a person was walking towards him. Step by step, there seemed to be wind, tigers, clouds, and dragons following him. As he walked, his aura continued to condense, becoming more and more majestic. Vaguely, there seemed to be the sound of waves surging endlessly. A terrifying force of heaven and earth surged towards Chunzong, as if to suppress Chunzong. Chu Zhongyang. The person who walked towards him was Chu Zhongyang. It seemed that he had been waiting here for Chunzong. Chapter 1478. Whoosh, whoosh. 1,000 meters away, Chu Zhongyang stopped in his tracks and stood with his hands behind his back. His golden-red robe fluttered in the wind, and an astonishing aura rose from his body. It was blazing to the extreme, like the rising sun in the sky, oppressing and sweeping through the ages. Chen Zong stopped, and a powerful aura gushed out from his body. He slashed out like an invisible giant sword. In an instant, Chu Zhongyang and Chen Zong's auras collided in the air. Like the rising sun and a giant sword, their auras were terrifying. Min Zhe stepped aside and stared at Chen Zong and Chu Zhongyang with interest. Both of them were peerless geniuses who had just entered the Divine Dark Army and had broken the previous record. It seemed that they were going to fight. In the army, it was normal for soldiers to fight as long as there were no obvious casualties. Chu Zhongyang made the first move. He raised his right hand and stretched out 2 fingers. A shocking red light surged out like the rising sun and pierced through the air. The red light was as blazing as fire and as violent as wind. The wind and fire intertwined and instantly pierced through the sky. In a thousandth of a breath, it had crossed thousands of meters and shot toward Chen Zong. Chen Zong recognized this finger. It was the finger that had defeated and killed him in the Battle of Xianyuan Saint. Chen Zong remembered clearly how powerless and helpless he was when he faced this finger. He couldn't resist at all. All his sword lights were pierced through and shattered, and he was killed at an absolute disadvantage. In less than a year, he faced this finger again. It was the same finger, but its power was many times stronger than before. After all, Chu Zhongyang was only a high-level half-saint at that time, and the power he used was half-saint power and half-step Dao meaning. Now, he was using true saint power and true Dao meaning, and its power was more than 100 times stronger than before. However, Chen Zong was no longer the same as before. His cultivation had reached the late second heaven saint realm, and his half-step Dao intent had transformed into a true Dao intent. His strength had increased by several times compared to before. However, Chen Zong could also see that Chu Zhongyang's cultivation had also reached the late second heaven saint realm. In terms of cultivation, both sides were equal. However, Chu Zhongyang's cultivation technique was the Xian Yuan dynasty's legacy technique, the top-grade Saint-grade Xian King World Shocking Art. This technique was considered one of the top-grade Saint-grade techniques, and it was much more profound than the relatively mediocre De Xian Yuan art. Moreover, Chu Zhongyang had also cultivated the Xian King Shocks the world to the 17th level. The purity of his saint power was even higher than Chen Zong's greater Xianyuan saint power. Besides that, the Wind Dao insight Chu Zhongyang possessed was the intermediate-grade Violent Wind Dao insight, whereas his Fire Dao insight was the advanced-grade Yang Flame Dao insight. The degree of fusion had attained a shocking 60%, and its might was terrifying to the extreme. Chen Zong's face was solemn. In an instant, he fully activated the 17th level of the De Xian Yuan art. His pure and majestic greater Xianyuan saint power surged out of the saint vortex and poured into the gilded heavy mountain sword. Chen Zong had not chosen a saint weapon that he was satisfied with in the saint weapon tomb, so he had no saint weapon to use at the moment. He could only use the gilded heavy mountain sword for the time being. As for the Nirvana evil sword, Chen Zong was very wary of it. He did not dare to use it recklessly in the Divine Dark Army. He slashed out with his sword. Limitless Sword Prison. This move was created by the fusion of Heart Sword Dao intent and Fire Dao intent. It was also the most powerful move that Chen Zong had mastered so far. Chu Zhongyang's first move was such a terrifying move. Perhaps he had not used his full strength, but he had definitely used most of his strength to defeat Chen Zong and regain his reputation. Because of Chen Zong's record, many people believed that Chen Zong had surpassed Chu Zhongyang. They believed that Chen Zong was the true number one of the younger generation in the Xianyuan dynasty and would replace Chu Zhongyang. Naturally, Chu Zhongyang was unwilling to accept this. Although he did not value the title of number one in the Xianyuan dynasty, He was still unhappy that it had been taken away so easily. On the other hand, Chu Zhongyang knew that the conditions offered by the Divine Dark Army to recruit Chen Zong were even better than his own. He was also very unhappy. His unhappiness stacked on top of each other. By defeating Chen Zong, he had proved to the world that he was the strongest and the #1 prodigy in the Xianyuan dynasty. He was unshakable. His finger collided with the limitless sword prison. In the blink of an eye, there were countless surges, and a terrifying aura burst out and rushed in all directions. Immediately, the limitless sword prison was penetrated, and the remaining power of the finger pierced through the sky and shot toward Chu Zhongyang. Chen Zong swung his sword and shattered the power of that finger. Using the absolute thunderbolt movement technique to its limit, he turned into a flash of lightning and closed in on Chu Zhongyang. As a Saint-class upper-class body movement technique, its power could only be exerted to the extreme by activating it with Saint power. Also, because of the active potential of his cultivation breakthrough, Chen Zong had cultivated the lightning flash body movement technique to the great accomplishment level and integrated it with the first revolution thunder will. His speed was even more shocking. His body turned into a flash of lightning, and as he rushed forward, he struck out with his sword. It was as if his body movement and sword art had merged into one. Chu Zhongyang narrowed his eyes and was secretly shocked. The speed of the sword was too fast, as if it was going to split him in half. Moreover, it was very strong. However, Chu Zhongyang's strength was very strong, and he was not afraid. He struck again in an instant. His finger trembled slightly, and the power of the finger pierced through the air and hit the sword. The tyrannical power immediately caused the Gilded Mountain sword to pause for a moment. In the next moment, another power of the finger shot toward him. After the finger force was unleashed, a blazing sun rose from Chu Zhongyang's body, emitting endless light and heat. It was as if it was illuminating the entire world. The terrifyingly high temperature threatened to burn everything in the surroundings into ashes. The light was extremely dazzling. Through the light, Chen Zong could vaguely see the blazing sun in Chu Zhongyang's hand, and he struck it fiercely. Extremely hot. Extremely violent. Before the blazing sun the size of a human head had completely struck, the shocking heat turned into a violent wind and blew toward Chen Zong. It made him feel as if he was being roasted on fire. His mouth and tongue were dry, and he felt as if his entire body was about to be burnt. Extreme heart sword style. Although the power of this sword was not as strong as the limitless sword prison, it was faster and purer. The Tao of the heart sword was completely integrated into it. The sword slashed out, piercing through the air and directly hitting the blazing sun in Chu Zhongyang's hand. The sword paused for a moment, and in the next moment, the blazing sun trembled unstably before exploding. An incomparably terrifying power spread out in all directions, as if the earth and sky were about to collapse. Countless ripples swept out like raging waves, surging endlessly. The astonishing heat turned the ground pitch black, and there were even cracks that seemed to have been slashed by the invisible sword qi. The terrifying power was like a wave of fire. Chen Zong could not help but retreat continuously, and there was the sound of something shattering. In this collision, Chu Zhongyang also retreated a few steps to avoid it. At the same time, he shot out a power of the finger that pierced through countless air currents, and once again attacked Chen Zong with shocking power. Chen Zong suddenly realized that a crack had appeared on the Gilded Mountain sword in his hand during that collision. It was the source of the sound just now. In the face of Chu Zhongyang's powerful finger power, Chen Zong could only protect the Gilded Mountain sword with his Grand Xianyuan Saint force and swing it again. Boundless blood sea. The bloody light surged and surged endlessly. A tyrannical power rippled within it and blocked those terrifying finger attacks for a second. Boundless blood sea was an offensive sword technique, but Chen Zong used it as a defensive sword technique. Chu Zhongyang did not move. He opened his hands, palms facing up, and each of them held up a blazing sun that rose into the air. The aura they released became more and more terrifying and powerful. Then, with a shake of his hands, 2 fist-sized blazing suns released endless light and heat. They bombarded Chen Zong at an astonishing speed, and made his hair stand on end. Lightning flash. Illusory net 9 changes. Dodge, counterattack. A sword slashed through the air, and the limitless sword prison descended. Xianyuan King. Chu Zhongyang shouted in a low voice. An extremely shocking aura suddenly exploded from Chu Zhongyang's body, rumbling and surging. The qi of heaven and earth in all directions seemed to bow down to a king, obeying his command and surging to surround Chu Zhongyang, instantly compressing and condensing. Chen Zong's expression changed drastically. Celestial Crystal Tyrant Body. This was an 8th-grade secret art that Chen Zong had cultivated to major completion. Even now, it could still enhance his strength. The major completion Celestial Crystal Tyrant Body could increase the strength of the late Second Heaven Saint Realm Chen Zong by several times. A sword slashed out, limitless sword prison. The power of this sword was even more powerful. However, Chu Zhongyang's attack seemed to be even more terrifying. A shocking invisible force bound the surroundings, affecting the might of Chen Zong's limitless sword prison. It was as if all the forces in the surroundings obeyed Chu Zhongyang's command. All the land under the heavens belonged to the king. All the land under the heavens belonged to the king. This was the feeling. The Xianyuan king shocks the world is too powerful. Minze couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Compared to the great mystery art, the difference was obvious. Shocks the world. As these 2 words rang out, the fluctuation of heaven and earth's origin energy became more intense and terrifying, as if something was brewing. It was as if an ancient vicious beast was about to awaken from its slumber, and once it woke up, it would destroy the heavens and earth. Chen Zong's expression changed drastically. He felt that the heaven and earth's origin energy had completely gone out of control in front of Chu Zhongyang. It was as if the other party had complete control over it, and the power of his attack was directly affected. In addition to their own strength, Saint Realm experts could also control heaven and earth's origin energy and integrate it into their martial arts to enhance the power of their martial art. It could be said that the power of a truly powerful Saint Realm expert's every attack was composed of their own saint energy, Tao intent, and heaven and earth's origin energy. Without any of these, the attack would be incomplete and its power would naturally be limited. Now, Chen Zong was facing such a situation. The heaven and earth's origin energy had gone out of control, as if it was controlled by Chu Zhongyang, causing the power of his attack to decrease significantly. In an instant, he was at a disadvantage. How could he resist? Even his heart domain was obviously affected, and its power was not as strong as before. Chapter 1479. A thunderous roar shook the heavens and the earth. The huge ball of elemental energy in Chu Zhongyang's hands suddenly turned into a meteor and blasted out. The air exploded, and the terrifying aura directly hit Chen Zong, trying to suppress him. The surrounding elemental energy was completely subdued and merged into the ball of elemental energy. As it rolled back, it seemed to form a vacuum. Countless streams of air rushed in from afar, causing everything within a few hundred meters to collide with the meteor-like ball of light. It was as if Chu Zhongyang was seeking his own death by colliding head-on. Chen Zong's expression was solemn. He gathered all the energy in his body and pushed it to the limit. He did not hold back, because if he held back now, he would be severely injured even if he did not die. He used all his strength to attack, and the limitless sword prison descended. An ant trying to shake a tree. Chu Zhongyang's eyes shone with divine light. He gazed down at Chu Zhongyang like a king. Chen Zong's expression became more and more serious. The power of this attack was too terrifying and difficult to resist. It made him feel as if he was fighting against the heavens and the earth. That's enough. Suddenly, a deep and vigorous voice rang out from all directions between heaven and earth. Immediately, the terrifying ball of elemental energy paused and fell apart. The battle was over. Chu Zhongyang fell from the sky. His brows furrowed as he stared at a certain spot in the air. His eyes shone with ancient divine light, and then he retracted the divine light. He looked coldly at Chenzong, then turned and left. Since he had been disrupted and could not continue the battle, he had to find another opportunity. However, even though the outcome of this battle hadn't been decided on the surface, Chu Zhongyang knew very well that he had the absolute upper hand. Especially that last move. If someone hadn't interfered, even if Chenzong hadn't died, he would have been seriously injured. That attack was the strongest move of the art of world-shocking king, and he had only just mastered it. It was his first time using it, but he did not expect it to be so powerful. The feeling of commanding the heavens and the earth was too wonderful. He was like the king of the world. After Chu Zhongyang left, Chenzong retracted his energy. A large number of cracks appeared on the gilded mountain sword, which quickly spread and then shattered. The battle just now had taken too much of a toll. The gilded mountain sword could not bear it. It seemed that he had to go to the saint weapon mound and choose a saint weapon as soon as possible. The art of world-shocking king of the Xianyuan royal family is the #1 cultivation method in the world. Minze walked over. As far as I know, there is no other cultivation method that can compare. Why is that? Chen could not help but ask. The saint force cultivated by the mysterious king shocks the world is stronger than the Dexian art, but there's a limit to it. The saint force cultivated by some of the top saint-tier cultivation techniques isn't any weaker. Minze said unhurriedly, but the Xian king shocks the world has a special characteristic, which is to control the qi of heaven and earth. A Xian king is a ruler. He commands and controls the world's energy for his own use. He indirectly deprives others of their ability to guide the world's energy. Chu Zhongyang has only reached the 17th level of the art of shocking the world. His ability to command the yuan qi of heaven and earth is not strong enough, but he has mastered the most powerful secret technique of the art of shocking the world. Once he uses it, he can directly command the yuan qi of heaven and earth within a few hundred meters. It was the attack just now. Hearing Minze's words, Chenzong suddenly understood. It turned out that it was because of this that he had the feeling that he was unable to use the world's origin qi, that he had the feeling that he was an enemy of the heavens and earth. Art of the mysterious king shocks the world. It was indeed a very domineering cultivation technique. With such characteristics, it was no wonder that it was ranked as the #1 cultivation technique in the world. Chenzong couldn't help but sigh with emotion. A powerful cultivation method would indeed make one's strength stronger. The great mystery art was indeed very ordinary. However, it was currently the best cultivation technique he could obtain, so he would cultivate it for the time being. Under Minze's lead, they passed through the void gate and arrived outside the sacred weapon mound. Once you enter through this gate, you will arrive at the sacred weapon mound. I will wait for you outside. Minze pointed to the front and smiled at Chenzong. He was now arranged to be Chenzong's guide so that Chenzong could familiarize himself with the Shenxian army. Okay. Chenzong nodded and strode forward. It was a pitch-black gate that seemed to lead to an abyss. It exuded an indescribably mysterious and strange aura. However, Chenzong was not afraid. He stepped into it and disappeared as if he had been swallowed up. As light and darkness alternated, Chenzong appeared inside the sacred weapon mound. A desolate and vicissitude aura filled the air and surged like an undercurrent, rippling around Chenzong. Vaguely, Chenzong seemed to hear countless voices in all directions. It sounded like a low chant, but also like an army of soldiers. The sacred weapon mound. This was the burial ground left behind by the countless masters of the mysterious Heaven Army. There were broken and shattered saint artifacts here, as well as complete saint artifacts. Every single saint artifact, regardless of its type or grade, had been used by its owner when they were alive. They were closely related to the owner, and after their owner's death, they were sent here. They more or less carried the owner's aura and beliefs when he was alive. It was said that many people had entered here and obtained sacred weapons. They also obtained the inheritances of the sacred weapons, such as martial arts or secret technique. These were all left behind by the sacred weapons owner when they were alive. Those who could leave behind their sacred weapons and form their inheritances were usually very strong when they were alive. Of course, such sacred weapons were often very difficult to obtain. Chenzong did not care too much. He came here to choose a sacred weapon that was suitable for him so that he could display his true strength. That was all. In the transcendent realm, spiritual energy was called spiritual sense. When one's cultivation broke through to the saint realm, spiritual sense would also transform into divine sense. The gap between divine sense and spiritual sense was like the gap between the transcendent realm and the saint realm. Chenzong's spiritual sense was originally far superior to ordinary spiritual sense. It was infinitely close to divine sense. With such a transformation, it was also far superior to ordinary divine sense. Chenzong released his divine sense, and in an instant, a void storm swept out in all directions. At the same time, Chenzong stepped forward and quickly walked into the sacred weapon mound. There were few sacred weapons outside the sacred weapon tomb, and most of them were broken. Under the coverage of Chenzong's spiritual sense, there was not much of a reaction. Soon, Chenzong went deep into the sacred weapon tomb. The aura inside became more and more intense. Evil chi and murderous intent mixed together and surged endlessly. The owners of these sacred weapons were all masters of the mysterious Heaven Army. Each of them had killed countless void demons. Their sacred weapons were naturally stained with evil chi and murderous intent. Those who did not have a strong will would be constantly attacked and even lose their minds when they entered here. Therefore, in the past, early Saint Realm soldiers were not qualified to enter here. They had to be at least intermediate Saint Realm. Moreover, they could not go too deep. The reason why the mysterious Heaven Army General allowed Chenzong to enter the sacred weapon tomb now was that he believed that Chenzong was a peerless genius and had enough willpower to resist. Although this would impact one's mind, it was also a kind of tempering. As he went deeper, Chenzong felt that the impact on him was getting more and more intense. It was as if countless illusions were appearing. Vaguely, Chenzong seemed to see countless scenes of battle. He saw countless void demons charging at him. He saw broken limbs piling up like mountains and blood flowing like rivers. However, Chenzong's mind was extremely firm and unshakable. After all, Chenzong's soul strength was comparable to a late Saint Realm master. However, he was limited by his cultivation realm and could only use part of his potential. Now that he had truly broken through to the Saint Realm, his body and mind had transformed. He had completely unlocked the potential of his soul and strengthened it. Now, Chenzong dared to say that the soul strength of an ordinary peak Saint Realm master was about the same as his. Such powerful soul strength could not be shaken by the evil chi and murderous intent. Of course, it also could not be used as a tempering tool. However, it was not useless. In an instant, Chenzong let go of his resistance and even took the initiative to absorb the evil chi and murderous intent. It quickly surged from all directions and poured into Chenzong's body. It was so dense that it seemed to have formed a giant cocoon. Countless evil chi and murderous intent entered his body. Chenzong withstood it completely with his strong physique. The Azura clone in his knowledge operated his cultivation method at full force and quickly absorbed and refined a large amount of evil chi and murderous intent. Chen Zong did not expect that he would have such a great harvest when he came to the Saint Weapon tomb to look for a suitable Saint Weapon. Normally, the Azura clone cultivated diligently, but unfortunately, due to the lack of sufficient evil chi, his progress was slow. Now, he had only reached the peak of the first heaven saint realm. After cultivating the burning evil Azura technique for a long time, he had only reached the 17th level. This was all because he did not have a good cultivation environment. Even if the Azura clone was strong, it was difficult to reverse the situation. Even the cleverest housewife could not cook without rice. No matter how outstanding the Azura clone's talent was, he could not create something out of nothing. Therefore, the speed of his cultivation was limited by absorbing the world's yuan qi. Of course, if the burning evil Azura technique did not rely on evil qi and instead relied on the world's yuan qi, the Azura clone's cultivation would be at least at the second heaven saint realm, possibly even at the third heaven. The evil qi and murderous intent in the Saint Weapon tomb had accumulated for countless years and had become incomparably dense. In the past, those who entered here only resisted and did not absorb and refine the evil qi and murderous intent. It was as if they were waiting for Chen Zong to arrive. The Azura clone continued to absorb and refine the evil qi and murderous intent. His cultivation rose layer by layer, breaking through early second heaven saint realm. But this was only the beginning. Soon, the Azura clone's cultivation broke through again, reaching the mid-second heaven saint realm, then the late second heaven saint realm. The Saint Weapon tomb's evil qi and murderous intent was majestic, but it was mixed and needed to be refined before it could be absorbed. However, there was a lot of it, enough for him to absorb for a period of time. Chen Zong did not waste any time. His divine sense spread out, slowly searching for a suitable saint weapon for himself. Peak second heaven saint realm. The Azura clone's cultivation rose at an astonishing speed, surpassing the main body once again. Moreover, it continued to rise. Peak second heaven saint realm. As his cultivation rose, so did the burning evil Azura technique. 18th level. The burning evil Azura saint energy in his body became purer and stronger. The saint whirlwind spun madly, accumulating and absorbing large amounts of evil qi. With a slight tremble, he broke through again. Chapter 1480. The murderous aura within the Saint Weapon tomb turned into a black vortex that swept in from all directions. If Chen Zong wasn't worried about being discovered, he would have released his Azura doppelganger and allowed it to absorb the murderous aura at a faster rate. Late third heaven saint realm. In the end, the Azura doppelganger's cultivation stopped. This was his current limit. Of course, it wasn't impossible for him to continue breaking through, but it would only cause his foundation to be unstable. Although his cultivation couldn't continue to increase, he could continue to absorb the murderous aura here and store it for future breakthroughs. As time passed, most of the murderous aura in the Saint Weapon tomb had been absorbed. Chen Zong felt that the light here seemed to be brighter and less oppressive. Next, he could wholeheartedly search for a suitable Saint Weapon. Suddenly, Chen Zong's eyes lit up as he saw a large forest of swords in front of him. It was a forest of swords stabbed into the ground. At a glance, there were more than 10,000 swords, and each sword emitted a shocking aura of sharpness. Chen Zong stepped into the forest of swords. It was as if he was surrounded by 10,000 swords. As he stood in the middle, he felt countless sharp rays of light slicing towards him, as if they wanted to pierce through his body. The owners of these swords had killed many void demons in their lifetime. These swords were stained with the blood of countless void demons and nurtured countless murderous auras. Under the impact, it seemed as if they wanted to cut Chen Zong into pieces. Chen Zong's eyes flashed. Suddenly, a shocking ray of light broke out of his body, shocking the world. Heart Sword Dao Intent. Although it was only a first revolution, as a high-grade Heart Sword Dao Intent, it possessed shocking power. In an instant, the swords in the Forest of Swords seemed to have felt the fluctuations of the Heart Sword Tao intense aura. They vibrated and reverberated endlessly. The Heart Sword Tao intent was a high-grade Tao intent. Its sharpness was shocking, and it naturally resonated with the swords. Chen Zong carefully sensed the swords. He felt that the swords resonated with his Heart Sword Tao intent the most and used it to choose the most suitable sword for him. Closing his eyes, Zhang Xian carefully sensed his surroundings. Every single sword was trembling, but the trembling varied in intensity. However, the strength of the trembling had nothing to do with the strength of the sword itself. Some of the sword auras were extremely shocking and could be said to be terrifying, while some of the sword auras were more ordinary. Chen Zong eliminated them one by one. As for the Azura doppelganger, it was in the sea of consciousness, consolidating its cultivation base that had advanced by leaps and bounds. Once it was fully consolidated, it would continue to absorb the baleful aura to break through. In the end, only 3 long swords resonated with the Heart Sword Tao intent the most, and Chen Zong was allowed to choose. One of them was a thin sword, as thin as a little finger. Such a sword could only be used for stabbing, which was not in line with Chen Zong's swordsmanship. It was a sword with a width of 2.5 fingers and a length of 1 meter and 8 inches. The body of the sword was crimson red like a fiery hell, as if there were countless streams of magma flowing around it. The last sword was a heavy sword. Chen Zong had tempered his body, so logically speaking, he should have chosen the heavy sword. However, at this moment, Chen Zong hesitated. Because in terms of the Heart Sword Tao intent and the perception of the heart, the second sword was the most intense, more intense than the other 2. Although there was only a slight difference, it also showed that the second sword was the most suitable sword for him. Chen Zong could not help but ponder. Immediately, Chen Zong revealed a wry smile, secretly thinking that he did not understand and did not think it through. One should prioritize one's own will, and everything else came second. Moreover, one could control the weight of the sword according to one's will. In his heart, without any hesitation, Chen Zong reached out and directly grabbed the crimson longsword. When the sword entered his hand, it let out an earth-shattering hum, and a blazing sharpness gushed out, as if a volcano had erupted and a fiery hell had descended. At the same time, a faintly discernible thought also spread to Chen Zong's spirit sea. The so-called spirit sea was the transformation of the sea of consciousness. It carried the divine thoughts, hence the name spirit sea. Flaming Hell Sword, a 5th-grade divine weapon, Chen Zong muttered to himself. That message was the message that the sword itself had sent to Chen Zong. A divine weapon already possessed a stronger spirituality. Although it did not have much intelligence, it had already mastered some basic abilities. From the moment it was forged, the name it was given was branded on it. A 5th-grade divine weapon was not an ordinary 5th-grade divine weapon, but an elite 5th-grade divine weapon. Its power was comparable to that of a 5th Heaven Saint rudiment stage genius. With my current cultivation base, a 5th-grade divine weapon is just right for me, Chen Zong thought to himself. The higher the grade of a divine weapon, the more powerful it was, but if one's cultivation base was insufficient, it would be difficult to control. The most important thing was that it was suitable. With the divine weapon in hand, the next step was naturally to go back and refine it. Only by thoroughly mastering it could it be compatible with him and truly unleash its power and strength. Leave. Chen Zong left the Saint Weapon Tomb and appeared outside. Chen Zong, how was it? Did you choose a divine weapon that you were satisfied with? Min Zhe immediately asked. Chen Zong nodded. Next, under Min Zhe's lead, Chen Zong went to an independent small tent. The Xiantian army was an army of cultivators. It was different from the armies of ordinary countries. In ordinary countries, the soldiers mostly lived in collective tents. However, it was not suitable for cultivators because they needed to cultivate, and it was best not to be disturbed when cultivating. Therefore, collective tents were not suitable. Only independent tents were suitable. Of course, independent tents were only an environment and were relatively ordinary. The advantage was that they would not be disturbed by the outside world and could cultivate well. Of course, there were also cultivation rooms in the barrack. Only then would they not be disturbed by the outside world. Chunzong had a month's time, so he could cultivate properly. In addition, he should also choose which of the 3 divisions of the Xiantian army to join. Combat Division, Imperial Division, Murder Division. The living quarters of the Xiantian army were very simple. Chunzong did not understand enough, so he did not make a choice directly. However, after asking Minze, Chunzong knew what he should choose. The Combat Division would lead the army and fight the Void Demons head-on. Imperial Division would defend and assist. In fact, all 3 divisions could fight against the Void Demons. It did not mean that the Combat Division was stronger than the Imperial Division. The only difference was in the formations. The Combat Division trained in head-on combat formations. The Imperial Division trained in defensive formations. As for the Murder Division, they trained in purely offensive formations. The difference between the Combat Division and the Imperial Division was that the Murder Division had fewer people. In other words, one could not enter the Murder Division just because they wanted to. Similarly, the people in the Murder Division had more freedom. Freedom. This was what Chunzong valued. Of course, this freedom was relative. After all, in the army, one had to follow the relevant military rules. However, compared to other armies, the Murder Division had the most freedom. After Chunzong understood, he naturally did not hesitate and made his choice to join the Murder Division. However, if Chunzong chose the Combat Division or the Imperial Division, then he could join directly. However, if he wanted to join the Murder Division, he had to go through an assessment. The assessment would be stacked with the recruitment mission 1 month later. However, everything would have to wait for 1 month. This month was Chunzong's 1 month of cultivation. He was refining the 5th grade sacred artifact, the Scarlet Hell Flowing Flame Sword. This sword had a strong reaction to the Tao Will of the Heart Sword, so the refining process was very smooth. In just 1 day, the Scarlet Hell Flowing Flame Sword was completely refined by Chunzong. It was completely compatible with Chunzong. Immediately, one image after another flowed into Chunzong's mind like flowing light. It was extremely clear. The primal chaos sky was filled with thick, grayish-black smoke. It surged like a great river, surging endlessly. With just one look, Chunzong felt shocked for no reason, a shock that came from the bottom of his heart. The vast land was covered with countless cracks. It was dry and dark like a ruin. It was filled with an indescribable smell of ashes. This was a battlefield. In front, there was a monster charging towards them. Chunzong could recognize that it was the Void Demon. On the ruined land, a crimson figure stood quietly. It was as if he was the only person in the world other than the Void Demon. The crimson light was blazing. It was as clear and bright as the lava in the Inferno Hell. His whole body seemed to have turned into a ball of fire that was burning fiercely. Through the fire, Chunzong could see the crimson robe on his body. He had crimson eyebrows and crimson hair. His long hair fluttered like a raging fire. His eyes emitted a blazing crimson light. He raised the sword in his hand and slashed out. Boom! The crimson light was like a flame that exploded in an instant. It turned into a long river. Like a volcanic eruption, magma surged out like a torrent. Wherever the flaming magma passed, the dry and cracked land became even more dry and scorched black. It was as if a raging fire had raged through it. It directly attacked the Void Demon. The Void Demon's body was hit by the flaming magma in an instant. It let out a furious roar. But in an instant, the defensive power of the Void Fiend was smashed apart in an extremely violent manner, and it turned into a charred corpse that was sent flying into the air and split into pieces. Zong couldn't help but be stunned. What a violent sword! It seemed to have abandoned everything. It was completely and extremely violent. The scene changed. It was the same person on the battlefield again. He was still holding the same long sword. Zong recognized it. It was the 5th grade sacred weapon, the red hell-flowing flame sword. The person held the sword and swung it again. This time, it wasn't the same violent sword as before. Instead, it was a red sword light. The highly condensed red sword light was extremely fast. It was like an aurora that pierced through the sky and shot out. Almost at the same time he swung his sword, the red sword light had already pierced through the void devil that was charging at him from head to toe. Fast. Extremely fast. Piercing through everything. The scene changed again. It was still the same person, the same sword, the same battlefield, and the same void demon. The third scene. The third sword. With a swing of the sword, a large ball of fire surged and hit the void demon. In an instant, it was as if oil had been added to the fire. The flames burned fiercely on the void demon's body. The extremely high temperature seemed to be burning the void around the void demon into a vacuum. In less than 3 breaths of time, the powerful void fiend had been reduced to ashes by the raging flames, dissipating in the wind. Then, the scene shattered and everything fell into darkness. It seemed like an instant, but also like a long time. Zong woke up and withdrew his gaze from the red hell-flowing flame sword. Chapter 1481. Dark Sky Military Camp. The Divine Dark Military Training Ground. The training ground had a radius of 1,000 meters and was surrounded by black pillars as thick as a burly man's waist. Each pillar was covered with marks. There were marks left by swords and sabers, marks left by fists and palms, holes left by finger techniques, and so on. These black pillars were the tools used by the soldiers to test the power of their martial arts. They were made from the black devil gold obtained from the void battleground. Not only were they extremely hard, but they were also terrifyingly tough. It was reasonable to say that such black devil gold should be an excellent material for forging saint weapons. Unfortunately, although the black devil gold was extremely hard and tough, it was also extremely heavy and could not conduct energy. Whether it was a spirit artifact or a saint artifact, it needed to be able to conduct energy in order to display its full strength. If it could not conduct energy, what was the use of it? Naturally, the black devil gold was reduced to a tool to test one's attack power. Each piece of black devil gold could withstand the full force attack of a peak Saint Rudiment stage master, but its attack power was not as strong as the full force attack of an ordinary peak Saint Rudiment stage master. It could only leave shallow or deep marks on its surface. Zong stood in the training ground. There was no one else besides him, so it was the perfect time for him to cultivate, calm his mind and focus his mind. Zong's shut eyes instantly opened, as a wisp of blazing red light shot out. In an instant, the scarlet prison flowing flame sword was unsheathed, transforming into a wisp of red light. The red light was highly condensed and compressed, as it pierced through the air and shot towards the black devil golden pillar. A sharp sound reverberated in the air. The red light was shattered, and a small outline the size of a finger was left on the black devil gold pillar, but it was very faint. The crimson light sword focuses on speed. What it pursues is extreme speed. This sword only has the form, but not the essence. Zong did not attack again. Instead, he mumbled to himself. The Scarlet Hellish Flame Sword was a Grade 5 Saint artifact. Its previous master had used this sword to kill many void demons. Who knew how much faith he had poured into this sword, and over time, it was absorbed by the sword. Furthermore, its previous owner had intentionally imprinted his own self-created sword technique into the sword. After his death, the Scarlet Hellfire Flowing Flame Sword possessed its previous owner's belief, willpower, and self-created sword technique information. The three sword moves that Chen Zong saw earlier were the self-created sword moves created by the previous owner of the Scarlet Inferno Flaming Sword. Of the three sword moves, the first one was called Bursting Flames, the second one was called Crimson Light, and the third one was called Ashes. Strictly speaking, there was no difference between the three sword moves because they each had their own unique characteristics. For example, the exploding flame was extremely violent and would instantly erupt with an incomparably shocking power. The Scarlet Light was astonishingly fast. It pierced through the sky like an aurora, piercing through everything. It was like the Ashes, blazing to the extreme. The temperature was incomparably high, incinerating everything in the world, turning everything into ashes. Each of the three sword movements was powerful and perfect. Even with Chen Zong's experience and comprehension, he could only marvel at them after comprehending them. After comprehending them, Chen Zong knew that these three sword movements were created based on the Fire Dao intent. Its function was to unleash the power of the Fire Dao intent to the extreme. Moreover, the person who created these three sword movements was very creative and talented. His methods were brilliant as well. He split the power of the Fire Dao intent and created a move from each of them, unleashing its characteristics to the extreme. A thought suddenly appeared in Chen Zong's mind. Perhaps that was the correct method and correct path to cultivate and utilize Dao insight. Only in this way would he be able to cultivate Dao insights better, and only in this way would he be able to better utilize the might of Dao insights to the limit. At the end of the day, he had talent, comprehension, and sufficient foundation and experience, but he had only just broken through to the Saint Rudiment stage. Although he also had the Great Abyss King's memories, those memories were fragmented and very limited. There was very little information about the Saint Rudiment stage in the fragmented memories of the Great Abyss King and Honorable Xia Luo. But no matter what, Chen Zong had to carefully comprehend these three sword movements after obtaining them. It was important to create one's own ultimate move, but it did not mean that one should reject the moves created by others. All flows to the sea. All swords to the origin. Only by comprehending all the sword techniques and sword principles in the world could one forge the purest, best, and strongest sword principles without any flaws. Moreover, by cultivating more suitable sword techniques, one could further enrich one's technique. The more techniques one had, the more adaptable one would be in battle and the harder it would be to be restrained. After cultivating for a while, Chen Zong grasped the basics of the three sword movements and felt their profoundness more and more. The power of the three sword movements far surpassed the blood drop sword technique. In other words, it was because the three sword movements were created based on the Fire Dao intent, while the blood drop sword technique was not. Chen Zong also realized that the blood drop sword technique needed to be activated by the blood Dao intent to unleash its full power. Cultivating these three sword moves was equivalent to cultivating one's own Fire Dao insight. Fully excavating its potential and improving its level would allow one to attain the second transformation even faster, and it was even to the extent that one had a chance of finding a critical factor to break through into the intermediate grade Dao insight. Fire Dao intent. It was as if the fire of heaven and earth possessed the characteristics and power of fire. What were the characteristics of fire? It burned at high temperatures. It was blazing and violent. It was like a bolt of lightning. Since the ancient times until now, since the birth of humans, they'd gradually discovered the profundity of fire. Using fire for warmth and cooking food, high temperatures and burning were certain, whereas blazing and violent flames were indeed extremely violent and shocking when they burned. As for flames that were like bolts of lightning, burning flames would emit flaming light. The speed of light was extremely swift, and flaming lights could be considered to be a type of light. Of course, the characteristics of fire might not be limited to these three, but these three characteristics were the most common and the easiest to notice and grasp. The previous owner of the Crimson Hellflame sword had created these 3 sword movements based on these 3 characteristics of fire. Not only was it able to allow him to better excavate the potential of the fire Tao intent and cultivate it more easily, it was also able to excavate the might of the fire Tao intent to the limit and strengthen his own strength. It could be said to be killing 2 birds with 1 stone. In this way, it was equivalent to opening up Chen Zong's train of thought and understanding the direction of his cultivation in the future. It turned out that the ultimate moves he created when he was at the half-saint realm seemed to be so crude and shallow when compared to this. However, Chen Zong was not discouraged. When he was at the half-saint realm, he had only mastered half-step Tao intent, so its power was limited and he didn't know how to excavate much of his potential. Only when he stepped into the saint realm and transformed half-step Tao intent into Tao intent could he understand the true profundity of it. Chen Zong had a feeling that the saint realm seemed to be the true starting point of cultivation and the beginning of transcendence. Collecting his thoughts, Chen Zong swung his sword again. When the sword rose, a wisp of crimson sword light broke through the air like a stream of flames. In the blink of an eye, it pierced through the sky and hit the black demon golden pillar, leaving a sword mark on it. The speed of this sword was even faster than before. However, it was still not enough. Chen Zong could clearly feel that he hadn't truly grasped this sword and still needed more cultivation. As for the other 2 sword movements, he didn't have extra time and energy to cultivate them at the moment. In the cultivation room, every time Chen Zong swung his sword, he would pause for a dozen breaths to quietly comprehend and ponder before swinging his sword again. Time passed slowly. Chen Zong didn't seem to know fatigue. He kept cultivating, swinging his sword, and comprehending. After a day, the speed of his sword had increased a lot. After 2 days, the speed of his sword had increased again. After 3 days, the speed of his sword had increased. On the 4th day, the speed of his sword seemed to have reached its limit and it was difficult to increase it any further. Initiation, Chen Zong muttered to himself. The crimson light sword had finally reached the initiation level and could display its initial power. However, reaching the initiation level meant that he had reached a bottleneck. It would not be easy to break through. Chen Zong put it aside for the time being and cultivated the second sword movement, bursting flames. This sword movement focused on the fury of fire. Its terrifying power erupted in an instant and reached its limit, destroying everything in its path. Boom! Raging flames shot out like a ball of fire. It streaked across the sky like a stream of flames, blazing fiercely. It directly hit the black demonic golden pillar and exploded in an instant. Terrifying fluctuations of fire spread all around the black demonic golden pillar, constantly stirring up the sound of explosions. When the fire dissipated, there was a large hole and many smaller holes on the black demonic golden pillar. Chen Zong frowned slightly. The power was too scattered. He needed to continue cultivating. After another 3 days, the bursting flames sword struck the black demonic golden pillar and exploded. When the fire dissipated, there was a hole left on the pillar. Initiation. Then, Chen Zong began to cultivate the third sword movement, ashes. Ashes. Ashes of the dying flames. When the raging flames had burned away, only a layer of ash was left. Ashes. Although there was no difference in the 3 sword movements, Chen Zong felt that ashes was the most terrifying one. It turned out that Chen Zong was right. After 3 days of cultivation, he still hadn't mastered ashes. It wasn't until the 6th day that ashes was considered initiation. It was much more difficult than crimson light and bursting flames. At this point, all 3 sword movements had reached initiation and could display their power. In comparison, Chen Zong found that ashes was more useful and practical than his limitless sword prison. After all, the limitless sword prison was created when he was at the half-saint level and was based on half-step Tao intent. Creating a unique skill is just a way to explore the path of cultivation, Chen Zong said to himself. What was the essence of cultivation? Survival? Longevity? Supremacy? None of them. None of them. At the beginning of cultivation, it was to master great power and survive better in danger. When one could survive, one would begin to pursue other things, such as longevity. When one could live longer, it was more than that. One hoped to surpass the shackles of lifespan and the shackles of heaven and earth, and pursue eternity. The higher one stood, the further one could see. As for combat, it was only to serve cultivation. It would allow one to go further and stand higher, and ultimately surpass everything. After all, there were too many dangers on the path of cultivation. When faced with these dangers, one couldn't resist them without sufficient means and ability. If one couldn't withstand them, one could only die and become nothing. The sudden enlightenment shook Qin Zong's heart and soul. It was as if a storm had swept up in his soul. Vaguely, Qin Zong seemed to have understood something. He felt as if he had peeked into a mystery. However, his realm was too low and he couldn't really touch it. Chapter 1482. In front of him was a familiar vortex. Colorful lights swirled around it. It was the Void Passage. Previously, Qin Zong and the other geniuses had gone to the Lesser Void Realm through this Void Passage to clean up the evildoers of the Void. This time, Qin Zong was going to the Void Battleground. The real Void Battleground, not the Lesser Void Realm. Qin Zong was full of expectations. There was an indescribable feeling in his heart. He seemed to be excited. The empty space battleground was originally just an empty space, but it was used to defend against the invasion of the empty space demons. In the end, it was formed by the collision of the stars in all directions, forming a line of defense for the spiritual martial sacred world. It was better to keep the empty space demons out of the spiritual martial sacred world and prevent the ancient bloody battles from happening again. That bloody battle almost caused the Lingwu sacred world to fall apart. If it happened again, the Lingwu sacred world might really be completely destroyed. The people would be plunged into misery and suffering, and they would suffer heavy losses. Qin Zong naturally did not come alone. He was led by Min Zhe. During this period, Min Zhe was equivalent to Qin Zong's guide. After showing their identities and verifying their identities, Min Zhe and Qin Zong stepped into the Void Passage and went directly to the Void Battleground. Inside the Void Tunnel, there were countless turbulent void turbulence, surging like waves, surging without end. Not long after, Qin Zong and Min Zhe saw the exit. With a leap, they rushed out of the void passageway like a Kuan Pring and appeared outside. Desolation. Embers. Cold. This aura fell directly on Qin Zong. Qin Zong's breathing stagnated and his body trembled unconsciously. He only felt a piercing coldness that penetrated his soul. It was as if his body and soul were about to freeze. He hurriedly circulated his saint power to dispel this extremely terrifying void chill. He could not help but be surprised when he looked at it. The gray and dark sky was completely chaotic, as if the heavens and the earth hadn't been split apart. Countless gray and black-colored airflows surged endlessly like the water of a long river. Qin Zong's eyelids couldn't help but twitch violently when he saw this because the gray and black-colored airflows contained an extremely terrifying might that could easily tear him apart. He did not know if a Mastery Saint Rudiment stage powerhouse could withstand it. At a glance, the primal chaos heavens seemed endless and boundless. Qin Zong's heart sank when he saw this. He withdrew his gaze and took a deep breath. He exhaled the oppressive feeling in his heart and felt relaxed again. Qin Zong looked at the earth. The earth was continuous and undulating as far as the eye could see. It seemed to be black, but under the gaze of Qin Zong's extremely sharp eyes, he could see that it was not black but dark red. It was the color formed after countless blood precipitated and dried. This land was stained with the blood of countless human powerhouses and void demons. Thinking of this, Qin Zong could not help but feel heavy. It was this land that blocked the large-scale invasion of the void demons and protected the living beings in the Lingwu Holy World. Otherwise, all the living beings in the Lingwu Holy World would have died. The void demons were more brutal and bloodthirsty than the demon clan in Blue Wave's world's Earth Demon Abyss. They were more terrifying. The two were not on the same level at all. But Chernzong was not afraid. In the past, his strength was far from what it was now, but he still dared to break into the Earth Demon Abyss and kill countless demon clan experts. He even killed his way out of the Earth Demon Abyss and killed countless demon clan experts. He killed so many demon clan experts that they were chased back to the Earth Demon Abyss. Although everything back then couldn't be compared to now, it forged an extremely tenacious belief. Minze did not disturb Chernzong. He knew very well that anyone who arrived at the void battlefield for the first time would be shocked and shocked. It was the same for him when he arrived for the first time. Half a quarter of an hour later, Chernzong woke up. His eyes shone with a terrifying light, like a heavenly sword piercing through the sky. Minze's heart skipped a beat. He felt that Chernzong's gaze was too sharp. He's only at the peak of the second Heaven Saint realm, but he actually made my heart jump. Minze could not help but smile bitterly. Although he was at the seventh Heaven Saint realm, and his strength was far superior to Chernzong's, the sharp light in Chernzong's eyes seemed to be able to pierce through everything. It was also shocking to him. A peerless genius, as expected of a peerless genius. Although he was not as strong as him now, he would catch up sooner or later and surpass him. Although Minze smiled bitterly, he did not feel jealous. Speaking of which, his talent was not bad. He was a genius, but compared to a peerless genius, it was still not enough. The exit of the Void Passage was located at the back of the Void battlefield. It was spacious and very safe, because it was located at the back of the Void battlefield. There was no way the Void Devils would come here. Minze led the way, and Chernzong followed closely behind. The two of them streaked across the blood-stained barren land, moving forward at an astonishing speed. After his cultivation had reached the peak of the second Heaven Saint realm, Chernzong had executed the lightning flash movement technique to the major success stage. His speed was not inferior to an ordinary peak third Heaven Saint realm cultivator. However, compared to Minze, there was still a huge gap. Therefore, in order to take care of Chernzong, Minze reduced his speed to the same level as Chernzong. As they continued to move forward, the barren and desolate aura filled the air, constantly washing over Chernzong's mind. It was as though he was undergoing a baptism. After about 2 hours, Chernzong saw a silhouette. It was a huge silhouette that seemed to stand at the end of the land. It was a city, an incomparably huge city. No. When Chernzong got closer, he discovered that it was not a city, but a fortress. A huge fortress that stood tall on the ground. The fortress was completely black, and it was incomparably sturdy and heavy. Countless golden patterns covered its surface, and those patterns seemed to form the shape of a flame. It burned fiercely and released a shocking amount of heat, covering a radius of 10,000 miles. Under the cover of the heat, the aura within 10,000 miles became stable and warm. There was no need to constantly circulate one's cultivation method to resist the bone-piercing chill from the void battlefield. This fortress was built by the ancestors of our mysterious Heaven Legion. Minze's eyes stared at the huge fortress in front of him. His voice was filled with amazement. This fortress was built to give the Xiantian army a place to defend against the invasion of the void demons. This fortress was built by the Xiantian army. It is the fortress of hope for the Xianyuan dynasty. The mysterious Heaven Battle Fortress. It was a very straightforward name. It was given this name because it was built by the experts of the mysterious Heaven Legion. As they approached the mysterious Heaven Battle Fortress, Minze introduced it to Chernzong. From the outside, the mysterious Heaven Battle Fortress looked like a huge beehive that stood tall on the ground of the void battlefield. Its structure was unique and had amazing defensive power. Moreover, its surface was covered with formations. Those small formations were interlocked and protected the entire mysterious heaven battle fortress. Countless small formations eventually formed a super-large formation. Its power was even greater than the 9-revolution mysterious heaven dust formation in the mysterious Heaven Legion's headquarters. This formation was called the Great Void Heaven Dust Formation. Usually, this formation would not be fully activated. It would only be activated 1/10 of its power. Even so, it was enough to resist the attack of a Supreme Saint without breaking. Of course, 1/10 of its power was not enough to withstand the second attack of a Supreme Saint, but the Great Void Heaven Dust Formation would be fully activated in an instant. A fully activated Great Void Mystic Heaven Dispersal Formation could completely resist the attack of an ultimate Supreme Saint. Moreover, it could trap and kill an ultimate Supreme Saint. Once upon a time, a Holy Lord of the Void Infernal died to the Great Void Mystic Heaven Dust Dispersal Great Formation, Min Zhe said proudly. A Holy Lord of the Void Malevolent Demon was equivalent to a Supreme Saint of the human race. In fact, he was slightly stronger overall. Chen Zong was shocked when he heard that. How shocking was it for a Supreme Saint to die? At the same time, he was worried that even a Supreme Saint could die. According to Min Zhe, the mysterious Heaven Battle Fortress was like a beehive. There were many passages and exits inside. It was very complicated. Without the guidance of the mysterious Heaven Legion, one would get lost inside. There was once a battle where the Void Malevolent Demon paid the price of a Holy Lord to break the Great Void Heaven Dust Formation, allowing the Void Malevolent Demon army to invade the mysterious Heaven Dust Formation. They wanted to slaughter the mysterious Heaven Legion and then open the Void Passage to invade the Xianyuan dynasty. Unfortunately, the Void Malevolent Demons did not know that there were many complicated passages in the mysterious Heaven Battle Fortress. They were not familiar with them at all. After entering, they were completely confused. Even if they were powerful, they were all killed by the Xianyuan dynasty soldiers. In that battle, it was said that there were more than 200,000 Void Malevolent Demons who had invaded. None of them escaped. There were many half-step Holy Lord demons among them. The Xianyuan dynasty's losses were very small. They only lost a few thousand people. Sacrificing a few thousand people in exchange for the deaths of 200,000 Void Malevolent Demons was very worth it. If they fought in the outside world, they would have to pay a huge price to kill 200,000 Void Malevolent Demons. That battle also caused great losses to the Void Malevolent Demons and won 100 years of peace for the Xianyuan dynasty. However, after that, the Void Malevolent Demons did not intend to invade the mysterious Heaven Battle Fortress again. Of course, there were many small battles. Not long after, Chen Zong and Min Zhe saw the patrolling Xianyuan dynasty soldiers. There were 10 of them. They were wearing black armor with silver patterns that looked like flames. This was the armor of the Heavenly Profound Army. These 10 people were from the Heavenly Profound Army. 10 extremely powerful auras instantly landed on Chen Zong and Min Zhe. However, when they saw Min Zhe's attire, they withdrew their auras. This was because Min Zhe was wearing a black armor with golden patterns. It was the armor of the Divine Dark Army. There was a blood sword mark on it, indicating that he was from the Death Division of the Divine Dark Army. Although Chen Zong was not wearing armor, since he was led by someone from the Death Division of the Divine Dark Army and did not have any strange aura, there was no need to stop them. If the Void Malevolent Demons wanted to disguise themselves, the formation of the mysterious Heaven Battle Fortress would recognize them and suppress them. Min Zhe exchanged glances with the 10 Heavenly Profound Army soldiers and nodded slightly as a greeting. Then, he led Chen Zong forward. Chapter 1483. The mysterious Heaven Battle Castle was like a beehive or an ant's nest. Without Min Zhe leading the way, Chen Zong was sure that he would get lost and not know where he would end up. According to Min Zhe, there were many dangerous places in the mysterious Heaven Battle Castle. Once one entered, one would be trapped or killed. Chen Zong followed Min Zhe's footsteps while using his powerful memory to memorize. However, he found that it was a bit confusing. In the end, what he could remember was very limited. He couldn't help but marvel at the amazing methods of the ancestors of the mysterious Heaven Army. There were many twists and turns. Sometimes they advanced and sometimes they retreated. Sometimes they retreated and then advanced. It was very deceiving. Finally, Min Zhe stopped in front of a thick door. The door was completely black and covered with golden patterns. It was like a golden flame burning. Xin Xian Army. This was the symbol of the Xin Xian Army. This was the camp of the Xin Xian Army in the mysterious Heaven Battle Castle. After taking out the Xin Xian Army token and verifying their identities, the door opened to let Min Zhe and Chen Zong in. First, there was a huge round door. Chen Zong estimated that it could accommodate tens of thousands of people at the same time without being crowded. At the edge of the round door, there were 3 doors. The doors were all black with golden patterns, but there were different symbols on them. The symbol on one door was the symbol of a long saber. The symbol on another door was the symbol of a shield. The last door was the symbol of a bloody sword. Battalion. Imperial Battalion. Murder Battalion. Min Zhe was a member of the Murder Battalion, so he naturally led Chen Zong to the door of the bloody sword. Token, verification, and opening. Each token was closely related to one's life. If one died, the token would break and no one else could use it. Moreover, the mysterious Heaven Army's tokens were made through 3 different methods. It was impossible to decipher the mystery unless one was familiar with the forging methods. That was too difficult. After all, there would be many checks to prevent it from being leaked. Only the relevant person would know about any link, and no one else would know about it. This way, the secret would be prevented from being leaked to the outside world. Stepping into the God Profound Army's killing division, Chen Zong could feel traces of faintly discernible killing intent in the air. That killing intent was not targeted at him, nor was it targeted at Min Zhe, nor was it targeted at anyone else, but it was everywhere. Gazes swept past Chen Zong, which made Chen Zong instinctively raise his guard. You're not a member of the Murder Battalion yet. You can only get the token after passing the test, Min Zhe said to Chen Zong as he led the way. Chen Zong nodded. Finally, he stepped into the depths of the Slaughter Division and met the Slaughter Division leader. The commander was the strongest. The Murder Battalion was the strongest person in the battalion. The exterminator was wearing a mask, which was pitch black in color and covered in golden runes. It was impossible to see his face clearly, except for a pair of closed eyes. He was also wearing a wide black robe with golden patterns on it, making it impossible for others to see through him. Gender, age, appearance. Chen Zong didn't know anything. He was very mysterious. Standing in front of the commander, 100 meters away, Chen Zong felt an indescribable pressure. It was as if the person in front of him was not a person, but a killing blade. In an instant, the Killer Lord's closed eyes opened, and an indescribable light shot out from them. Chen Zong felt his hair stand on end. He felt as if he had been pierced by a pair of extremely bright and clear eyes. There was no murderous intent, but it contained an ancient murderous intent. The strange contradiction was even more frightening. No matter if you're a peerless genius or an ordinary genius, you have to complete the mission to enter the Murder Battalion first. A strange voice came from under the commander's mask. It was like a metal vibration. It was impossible to tell the commander's gender from his voice. He waved his hand. 3 black cards with the dripping blood sword logo flew out and stopped in front of Chen Zong. 3 missions. 9 death. Choose one and complete it. The commander's strange metal voice sounded again. Min Zhe's expression changed drastically. 9 deaths. But he didn't say anything. He was not allowed to speak here. 9 deaths. Chen Zong mumbled in a low voice. He wasn't very clear about the meaning behind those words. However, from those words, he could feel that the difficulty of this mission was extremely high. It wouldn't be easy to complete it. Chen Zong glanced over and didn't think too much. After all, the 3 cards and 3 missions were at the same level. So, he didn't know what the mission was. He would just rely on his intuition. Chen Zong reached out and grabbed the card on the right. The other 2 cards flew back to the commander's hand. Complete the mission. Then you'll be a member of the murder battalion. As the commander's voice faded, he was surrounded by darkness and disappeared. Min Zhe immediately left with Chen Zong. Outside, Min Zhe gasped for breath. Then he said with a wry smile, "I didn't expect your mission to be so dangerous." Before Chen Zong responded, Min Zhe said again, as if he was talking to himself, "Missions are generally divided into 4 levels. The lowest level is life without death. As the name suggests, it's a simple mission. Usually, there won't be any casualties, unless there's an unexpected situation. Above life without death is half life and half death. It means that there's a 50% chance of death. But such missions require more caution. The probability of death is very low, but most of the time there's an injury. Above that, there's a 90% chance of death. You'll die if you're not careful. The probability of death is very high." Min Zhe looked at Chen Zong with a wry smile again. He didn't expect that the commander would give Chen Zong such a difficult mission. After all, Min Zhe's mission when he joined the murder battalion was only half life and half death. On the other hand, ordinary military missions were all about life and death. In fact, in the Void Battleground, even if there were life and death missions, there was still a lot of danger. So, one could imagine how frightening a mission with a 90% chance of death was. Now that the mission had been given, it couldn't be changed, unless Chen Zong didn't join the murder battalion. But Chen Zong was never a coward. If there were difficulties, he would go against the current. "What about the rank 4 mission?" Chen Zong asked. "Death without death." Min Zhe spat out these words with great difficulty. Every single word was suffused with an indescribable heaviness. It was as if a huge hammer had been ruthlessly smashed down and heavily smashed onto Chen Zong's heart, causing him to involuntarily feel a strand of sorrow. Death without death missions rarely appear. But every time it appears, it means that many people will die. Min Zhe took a deep breath and said solemnly, "Under normal circumstances, missions with a 90% chance of death were the most difficult ones, because death without death missions rarely appeared. Let's see what your mission is." Min Zhe changed the topic. Chen Zong picked up the card and looked at it carefully. The content of the mission was listed on the card. Pick a demon essence flower from the Demon Essence Valley. Min Zhe read it out word by word, and his face changed immediately. Demon Essence Valley. Brother Min, where is the Demon Essence Valley? Chen Zong couldn't help but ask. The Demon Essence Valley is a dangerous place in the Void Battleground. Min Zhe replied, "The Void Battleground is a general term. There are many dangerous places, and the Demon Essence Valley is one of them. The dangerous places in the Void Battleground are divided into 4 levels by us: low, medium, high, and top." Chen Zong listened carefully because it was very important for him to complete the mission. The Void Demons are different from us. They are more chaotic. After they enter the Void Battleground, if they don't fight with us, they will be scattered everywhere and become dangerous places. Compared with the Void Demons, the human race was actually at a disadvantage, because the Void Demons gave the human race the feeling that they were endless. As long as there was a need, they could come from the void of the universe. However, it seemed that the Void Demons were not only targeting the Xianyuan dynasty, so the number of Void Demons that came was always limited. If the void demons were compared to a huge army, then the void demons that attacked the Xianyuan battle fort were only a small part of it. The rest of the void demons would naturally attack other places. For example, there were 9 worlds in the Tianyuan sacred realm, and the Xianyuan dynasty was only one of them. In addition, there were 8 other worlds that were also resisting the invasion of the void demons in other places of the void battleground. The human race's experts were limited. If they fought the void demons to the death, it was inevitable that there would be heavy casualties. Therefore, they often fought the void demons in a tug-of-war and adopted a conservative strategy. As long as the void demons did not take the initiative to attack, the Xianyuan army would not send out a large number of troops. At most, they would hunt on a small scale with minimal losses. Some of the dangerous places formed by the void demons had void doors built by the void demons. Their purpose was naturally to make it easier for the void demons to reach the void battleground. Among the many dangerous places, the Demon Essence Valley was an intermediate dangerous place. Above it were advanced dangerous places and top dangerous places. However, a low dangerous place was dangerous for an early Saint Rudiment realm expert. An intermediate dangerous place was also dangerous for an intermediate Saint Rudiment realm expert. For an early Saint Rudiment realm expert, it was almost a death zone. It was no wonder that Chunzong's mission was so dangerous. Of course, this was relative. If this task was given to an expert at the peak of the Saint Rudiment realm, it would not be so dangerous. According to the military rules, the task can only be completed by you alone. I can't help you, Minze said. Chunzong nodded. However, you are not familiar with the void battleground at all, so I can provide you with a little help, Minze said again. This help was to let Chunzong know the direction of the Demon Essence Valley and how far it was from the Xianyuan battle fort. In addition, Chunzong also obtained a temporary Xianyuan army token. Moreover, he had a better understanding of the Demon Essence Valley, so it would be more convenient for him to complete this dangerous task. Then, Minze sent Chunzong out of the Xianyuan battle fort and watched as Chunzong left. "Remember, you must come back alive," Minze whispered. Chunzong waved his hand and strode forward. He used the lightning flash movement skill and moved faster and faster. Soon, he turned into a bolt of lightning and disappeared from Minze's sight. The spirit array of the Xianyuan battle fort was still operating. It was not affected by the arrival or departure of anyone. It was like the sun rose and the moon set. Chapter 1484. The land of the void battlefield was dry and dry. Blood seeped into the ground. The sky was chaotic and turbulent. On the boundless land, a silver bolt of lightning flashed. It streaked across the land at an astonishing speed. If one looked closely, one could see a figure flying alone on the void battlefield within the lightning. A Saint Realm cultivator could fly in the sky and use the lightning flash, a Saint-grade high-grade lightning flash movement technique that had reached the grand completion stage. After integrating the first revolution Thunder Dao Will, one's speed was much faster. At this time, Chunzong had flown out of the range of the Tai Chi Profound Heaven Dust Disintegration Array. The bone-chilling aura kept drilling into his body as if it wanted to freeze his body and mind. Chunzong had to use the ancient fire refining art to resist. Although the purple cloud black star flame had not transformed and could not provide any help to Chunzong, who was already a Saint Realm cultivator, it was still useful. For example, now that he was using the ancient fire refining art, heat swept through his body to resist the cold. At the edge of the mysterious Heaven battle fort, there were still mysterious Heaven army soldiers patrolling. However, there were no patrols beyond that. All Chunzong could see was endless desolation and desolation. There were no people or void demons in sight. It was as if he was the only one between heaven and earth. Chunzong was on his way to carry out his mission. Demon Essence Valley. That was the location of his mission. Demon Essence Valley was an intermediate danger zone where a large number of void demons were stationed. The reason why the void demons were stationed in Demon Essence Valley was not only to establish a stronghold in the void battlefield, but also to obtain void saint herbs. The so-called void saint herbs were saint herbs that could only grow in the void universe. The void battlefield was also part of the void universe. These sacred void herbs were quite useful to the evil void demons. Naturally, the evil void demons would guard and protect them, because the human race was gradually able to use these sacred void herbs to refine pills. For example, one of the main ingredients in the mysterious spirit essence pill was a void saint herb. The 3 main ingredients in the mysterious spirit enlightenment pill were also void saint herbs. Chernzong was asked to go to Demon Essence Valley to pick a demon essence flower, which was a void saint herb. The demon essence flower was naturally located in Demon Essence Valley and was guarded by many void demons. If Chernzong wanted to pluck the devil essence flowers, he would have to enter the Devil Essence Valley and face the Void Fiend that guarded the Devil Essence Valley. Danger. It was very dangerous. It was a narrow escape. Even so, Chernzong had to go. He had to press forward without fear. He had to complete this mission no matter what. He also had to enter the Spirit Xian Army's Slaughter Division. That was very attractive to him. The Xiantian Army and the God Mystery Army were choosing their own people. Calm. Chun. Edition. OM. OM. It was as cold as hell. Chernzong's figure paused, and he did his best to restrain his aura, not letting it leak out. He had come here alone with a sword. If he attracted the attention of the void demons, he would definitely attract a large number of void demons. He might be able to kill 1 or 2, but it would not be easy to deal with a large number of void demons. If he was not careful, he might die here and everything would be for naught. Demon Essence Valley. The Demon Essence Valley was right in front of him. Outside the Demon Essence Valley, there were some void demons roaming around as if they were patrolling. Chernzong concealed his aura and tried his best to hide as he pondered. The Demon Essence flower was located in the Demon Essence Valley. How could he pick a Demon Essence flower? If one was powerful enough, then one could indeed charge in with a sword. While killing the demons of the void, one could also pluck the Demon Essence flower, complete the mission, and officially become a member of the killing division. However, his current cultivation base at the peak of the second Heaven Saint Rudiment stage was not enough. Perhaps an ordinary peak second Heaven Saint Rudiment stage cultivator would not be a match for him. The same could be said for a void demon at the soldier level who was equivalent to a second Heaven Saint Rudiment stage cultivator. However, there was an even more powerful murderous weapon level above the soldier level. Above the murderous weapon level was the general level void demon at the intermediate Saint Rudiment stage. There was a huge gap between the early Saint Rudiment stage and the intermediate Saint Rudiment stage. Similarly, there was a huge gap between the soldier-level void demon and the general-level void demon. There was a general-level void demon guarding the Demon Essence Valley. Chernzong pondered as he observed. However, under his observation, although the void demons outside the Demon Essence Valley seemed to be roaming around, they had sealed off all routes to enter the Demon Essence Valley. After many simulations, Chernzong discovered that no matter which route he took, he would not be able to avoid the void demons. At the very least, he would encounter one. Although there were some rocks outside the Demon Essence Valley, if a battle broke out, the aura would attract other void demons. At that time, he would be besieged by a large group of void demons. The consequences would be unpredictable. No wonder this mission is rated as a 9 out of 10 chance of survival. Chernzong could not help but think to himself. He was also aware of the difficulty of this mission. For a moment, Chernzong could not help but feel a headache coming on. What should I do? In fact, according to Chernzong's habit, the most direct method would be to charge in with his sword in hand. As soon as this thought appeared in his mind, Chernzong's eyes gradually sharpened as though they were going to pierce through the sky. His conviction grew stronger as well. Everyone had to master the art of adapting to circumstances. However, in a situation where one could not adapt to circumstances and had no choice, one could only resort to the most direct method. Since that was the case, he could only charge in. It was a good opportunity to test his current strength. Otherwise, would he continue to waste time here? One should know that this mission could only be completed by himself. No one else was allowed to help him. Fortunately, he still had a trump card. It was one of the trump cards that the 5 Dao Masters of White Cloud Mountain had given him. It was a trump card that allowed him to unleash the full strength of a 6th-level Saint Rudiment stage expert. Moreover, it was a large-scale attack. Other than that, he also had a one-time use secret treasure that allowed him to unleash the full speed of a 6th-level Saint Rudiment stage expert. Perhaps it would come in handy this time. Since that was the case, he would just have to kill. Since he had made up his mind, Chernzong did not act rashly. He continued to advance according to the best route that he had simulated. On this route, he would only encounter one void demon. As for attracting the attention of other void demons, there was nothing he could do. He could only charge into the Devil Essence Valley as soon as possible, pluck a Devil Essence flower, and leave quickly. Charge. In an instant, Chernzong executed the lightning flash movement technique to the extreme. In an instant, he felt as though he had broken through to the next realm. Fast. Extremely fast. Extremely fast. It was as though a real bolt of lightning had streaked across the sky. Although it was often said that a cultivator's speed was as fast as lightning, it was still a far cry from a real bolt of lightning. However, it seemed that it really did have such momentum. In an instant, Chernzong flew thousands of meters and rapidly approached the Devil Essence Valley. However, the moment Chernzong moved, the nearest soldier-level void demon also sensed it and immediately rushed over. It raised its pitch-black sharp claws and mercilessly slashed through the air, leaving scars in the void. A chill ran down Chernzong's spine and made his hair stand on end. The Nirvana evil sword was instantly unsheathed. The sword turned into a ray of red light and pierced through the sky. It was much faster than his movement technique. Almost as soon as the sword was unsheathed, the sharp red light had already pierced through the void demon's head. The extremely terrifying sword chi surged into the void demon's body and wantonly destroyed it, killing it in an instant. In an instant, the soldier-level void demon's life force was rapidly devoured by the Nirvana evil sword. In the blink of an eye, it was reduced to ashes, leaving behind a core that automatically flew up and fell into the storage ring. At the same time, the other void demons in the surroundings were also attracted. They roared angrily, their killing intent shocking the heavens. They were extremely ferocious. Black clouds rolled, and a murderous aura surged like a tide. Kill. One after another, the soldier-level void demons charged over. Elite soldier level. Soldier level. There was even one murderous soldier level. Chernzong ignored them and kept moving forward. The Demon Essence Valley was right in front of him. In the next breath, he would be able to rush into the Demon Essence Valley. However, a black light flashed in front of him. An extremely sharp blade light slashed across the sky, as if it could destroy everything in its path. This blade light, as if it could destroy all life force, was extremely ferocious. In an instant, Chernzong's hair stood on end and his hair stood on end. It was difficult to avoid. Then, there was no need to avoid it. Without hesitation, Chernzong made the quickest choice. A light flashed between his eyebrows, and a gray light burst out in an instant. The sound of metal clashing could be heard. In the next breath, the pitch-black blade light that could destroy all life force was shattered. The second attack was launched. An astonishing murderous aura surged, and a murderous aura soared into the sky. The soldier-level void demon was instantly cut in half. Azura's doppelganger, Chen Xiu had arrived. After killing a soldier-level void demon, which was equivalent to a 4th-level Saint Rudiment stage void demon, Chen Zong handed the Nirvana evil sword to Chen Xiu. Chen Xiu's figure flashed, and his sword pierced through the air, instantly killing his way into the Demon Essence Valley. As for Chen Zong himself, he pulled out the Crimson Hellfire flowing sword and attacked the other void demons. The strongest void demon wandering outside the Demon Essence Valley was at the murderous soldier level, and there was only one of them. Kill. Crimson Light. The sword was like a crimson light that instantly pierced through the air. An astonishing aura of the Tao of Fire spread out, as if it was burning the void. Bursting flames. The second attack was launched. Raging flames surged like a torrent, bombarding in all directions. The extremely violent power destroyed everything, and everything was blown to pieces. Ember. The third attack was launched. Raging flames burned fiercely, burning everything. One by one, the fiendish void devils were incinerated into ashes by the flames of Ember. They were completely dead. So strong. Chen Zong was secretly shocked. Previously, he had only practiced these 3 sword moves in the cultivation room, so he didn't know how powerful they were. Now that he was using them against the void demons, their power was fully displayed. They were indeed very strong. More than a dozen void demons, ranging from elite to soldier level, were all defeated in an instant. The murderous soldier-level void demon was also injured. Crimson Light. Another sword attack. Crimson Light pierced through the air, piercing through the body of the murderous soldier-level void demon. Chen Zong was also aware of his current strength. He was stronger than a 3rd-level Saint Rudiment stage cultivator, but whether he could defeat a 4th-level Saint Rudiment stage cultivator was still unknown. He needed more battles to prove it. Chapter 1485. Scarlet Light. The sword light was crimson red, like a bolt of lightning piercing through the sky. It was like a hot knife through butter, destroying everything in its path. The body of the murderous weapon-level evil spatial devil was penetrated once again. The terrifying sword aura surged and tore everything apart. The murderous weapon-level evil void demon was dead. Chen Zong did not dig out the heart cores of the void demons because time was of the essence. Chen Xiu had already broken into the Devil Essence Valley with the Nirvana Evil Sword and was being intercepted by many void demons. Chen Zong had to rush over and help as soon as possible. This was the first time the main body and the avatar had joined forces against an enemy. His true body rushed into the Devil Essence Valley, and his body shot out like a bolt of lightning. His sword brought about a scarlet light, and a fiery aura instantly filled the air, rippling endlessly. Scarlet Light. The speed of this sword was astonishing. It was as if it could break through time and space as it pierced through the head of a void demon. Innate Fiend Force Field. The innate ferocious force field that Chen Xiu's Azura doppelganger had unleashed covered an area of 1,000 meters. Inside the Saint Weapon Tomb, Chen Xiu had absorbed a large amount of baleful qi, and his cultivation had broken through to the late Third Heaven Saint Realm. He had also absorbed and stored a large amount of baleful qi, slowly refining it. Now, his cultivation had reached the peak of the Third Heaven Saint Realm, and his Burning Fiend Azura art had broken through to the 18th stage. The Tyrannical Burning Fiend Azura art. The Tyrannical Burning Fiend Azura sword art. Innate Fiend Force Field. Illusory Net 9 changes. Combining all of these factors together, Chen Xiu's strength had become even more tyrannical. The general rank Void Devil couldn't even block a single strike of his and was instantly killed. Only the general rank Void Devil, whose strength was equivalent to a 5th Heaven Saint Realm Void Devil, was barely able to contend with Chen Xiu, but even then it was killed in 3 strikes. It was Chen Zong's first time seeing Chen Xiu's strength. Although this was his avatar and their souls were connected, there were still some differences. The Azura doppelganger was an independent life form, just like his true self. Azura's doppelganger was now much stronger than Chunzong's original body. It wasn't just the cultivation level, but also the level of the cultivation technique, the power of the sword technique, and the Tao intent. The heavenly baleful Tao will was a high-level Tao will, and it had been comprehended to the second revolution. The might of the second revolution heavenly baleful Tao insight was much stronger than the first revolution. Within the demonic essence valley, there were countless demonic void demons residing everywhere. At this moment, they were like sharks that had caught the scent of blood as they swarmed over from all directions. Chunzong and Chunxiu were heavily surrounded, but due to the innate ferocious force field, the evil void devils were also affected. Their strength was greatly reduced, which in turn increased Chunzong and Chunxiu's strength. On the other hand, Chunzong was inside the innate ferocious force field, but he was not affected in the slightest. Moreover, he had the heart domain. Therefore, the murderous weapon-level void devil could not withstand a single strike from Chunzong. Even if it was a general-level void devil, Chunzong could kill it with 3 strikes. Carefree. Massacre. He continued to attack, and the red light pierced through the sky. The speed of the sword seemed to be getting faster and faster, and the red light became more and more condensed. Breakthrough. Small accomplishment. The crimson light sword had reached small accomplishment. Its speed was faster and its penetrating power was stronger. Sure enough, this kind of life-and-death battle and slaughter was the best way to improve. Chunzong wanted to immerse himself in this kind of battle, but his purpose in coming here was to complete the task of plucking a demon essence flower. Moreover, if he continued to fight, there would be more and more evil void devils approaching, which would be even more disadvantageous for him. His true body and doppelganger joined forces and slaughtered countless of them as they went deeper into the demonic essence valley. Suddenly, an extremely tyrannical aura rushed over with a loud bang. It was ferocious and brutal to the extreme. Heavenly general-level void devils. This was a terrifying void devil that was equivalent to a 6th Heaven Saint Rudiment stage martial artist. It was much stronger than an ordinary 6th Heaven Saint Rudiment stage martial artist. In an instant, 2 heavenly general-level void devils charged directly into the innate ferocious force field, causing it to fluctuate violently like a surging tide. Chunzong's face was solemn. His true body was no match for these void devils, even in the innate ferocious force field. The gap between them was too big. The gap between the Saint Rudiment stage was even more obvious than the gap between the half-saint stage. The difference in strength between each Heaven Saint Rudiment stage was not fixed at all. It could be normal, or it could be huge. This was because cultivation was not the only standard of strength, but also the combination of martial arts, Tao intent, and other aspects. For the truly powerful Saint Rudiment stage martial artists, Tao intent often accounted for a large part of their strength. Demon essence flowers often grew in the depths of the demonic essence valley, making it even more difficult to pluck them. However, since he was here, he could not give up no matter what. Kill. He killed his way out. Chunxiu drew his sword and blocked the 2 heavenly general-level void devils with his own strength. His true body quickly moved forward and went deeper into the demonic essence valley. However, he could not move an inch. The void devils continued to attack, causing Chunzong to be in a difficult battle. Illusory net 9 transformations. His figure split into 6, changing between real and illusory unpredictably as he dodged the void devil's attack. Kill. Bursting flames had broken through to the initial stage. The sword remnant burned everything, turning everything into ashes. Chunzong's face was solemn as his strength was constantly being consumed. The yuan qi of heaven and earth in the void battlefield was very chaotic, making it difficult for him to absorb. In the middle of a battle, it was also difficult for him to quickly refine and restore his strength by consuming pills. A sharp claw pierced through the void and silently attacked Chen Zong's back. The speed of the attack was extremely shocking. Chen Zong's heart domain allowed him to catch a trace of a fluctuation and react quickly. However, he was still a bit too slow. The defensive power behind his back was instantly torn apart, and a terrifying chill invaded his body. Even though Chen Zong's body was tough, it was difficult for him to resist. Intense pain assaulted his body as the shocking power invaded his body, causing Chen Zong's expression to change slightly. Even though he was not weak, facing so many void devils, there were still times when he would be careless. The power of the void devils continued to invade Chen Zong's body and wreak havoc. Chen Zong had to divert part of his strength to resist, which caused his strength to decrease imperceptibly. Chen Zong's sword pierced through the void, killing the void devil that injured Chen Zong. After piercing through it, he killed the other void devils and alleviated Chen Zong's crisis. He used his own strength to help Chen Zong move forward and pluck the demon essence flower. The demon essence flower grew on a cliff, swaying in the wind. It was completely black, and its surface was crystal clear like a mirror. It was like a beautiful piece of art that was highly collectible. Countless chaotic yuan qi was constantly being absorbed by the demon essence flower. This kind of chaotic yuan qi was not good medicine for the human race. On the contrary, absorbing too much of it was harmful. It would cause one's strength to become impure and impure. However, to the Void Saint medicine, it was a necessary thing. It was just like how ordinary people needed to breathe air. Through the gaps between the void devils, Chen Zong saw the demon essence flower, and his eyes suddenly lit up. Illusory net 9 changes. Lightning flash. The two types of movement techniques were used alternately in an instant, and he quickly rushed forward. Chen Xiu also gave up on the two heavenly general realm void devils to protect his body and block the attacks of the void devils. The demon essence flower was right in front of him. He slashed out with his sword, dug up a demon essence flower, and put it into his storage ring. The void devils went crazy in an instant, as if they had exploded. The demon essence flower was a void sacred herb, and it was very useful to the void devils. One of the reasons why they guarded the Demon Essence Valley was for these demon essence flowers. After the demon essence flowers matured, they would be plucked and sent back to the Void Devil Army. Now, this batch of demon essence flowers had matured and were waiting to be plucked and sent away, but one of them had been plucked by a human. Although one demon essence flower was nothing compared to hundreds of them, it was a matter of pride. In the eyes of many void devils, the human race was just a weak race. If they wanted, they could send an army to flatten the void battleground and kill countless people. It was only because there were too many worlds to conquer that they were in a stalemate. Chen Zong was not overjoyed when he got the demon essence flower, because the mission had only begun when he got the demon essence flower. He had to leave the Demon Essence Valley and return to the mysterious heavenly battle fortress to hand in the Demon Essence flower. However, the plucking of a Demon Essence flower had completely angered the Void Devils, and they charged at him like a raging tide. Chen Xiu unleashed his full strength, ignoring the consumption of his energy. Because Chen Xiu was a doppelganger, he was stronger and could withstand more attacks. Moreover, even if Chen Xiu was injured, he could still absorb the stored evil qi to recover. Moreover, Chen Xiu could also refine a large amount of stored evil qi to recover his energy. This was something that the real body could not compare to. Furthermore, the continuous killing of the void fiend devils would cause the malevolent qi to accumulate endlessly, which would then be absorbed by Chen Xiu. Unknowingly, Chen Xiu's cultivation state would be raised gradually. Fight, fight, fight. The fierce battle was endless, just to break out of the encirclement. The void devils went berserk, and Chen Zong's expression was incomparably dignified. He had consumed most of his energy. Too weak, my strength is still too weak. Chen Zong thought. If he did not have the Azura Doppelganger as his trump card, he would not even be able to enter the Demon Essence Valley and complete the mission. Fortunately, he had the Azura Doppelganger. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to become a member of the Death Division. Is the Death Division's assessment really that difficult? No, it should be me. After all, Min Zhe had said that the difficulty of his mission was half life and half death, not 9 deaths and 1 life. He really thinks highly of me. There were more wounds on his body, but Chen Zong's expression became colder and colder, as if the pain on his body was fake. Of course, the wounds were real, and so was the power that was constantly invading his body. However, Chen Zong had to endure and endure. In an instant, Chen Zong burst out with all his strength and slashed out with his sword. The evil chi was like a violent thunderbolt that wreaked havoc and destroyed more than a dozen void devils, opening a way for Chen Zong to escape. Chen Zong took out a secret treasure. It was a life-saving trump card that one of the 5 Dao Masters of White Cloud Mountain had given him. It could release the full strength of a 6th heaven-entering Saint Realm expert in an instant, covering a large area. He threw the secret treasure behind him, and it landed among the void devils. It exploded in an instant, and the terrifying power was like a volcanic eruption, destroying everything in its path. It directly affected a radius of 1,000 meters. The shocking roar seemed to come from the distant horizon, and it was deafening. Chen Zong only felt an extremely terrifying power that brought along a wave of destruction, rushing towards him like a violent wave. That power could completely destroy all of his defenses and destroy his body. Fast. Even faster. Charge. Charge. Chapter 1486. Rumble. An astonishing roar reverberated endlessly, and the chaotic Yuan Qi surged endlessly like a raging tide. A streak of silver lightning shot out from the pitch-black valley in an instant, and after the lightning, there was a surging tide of energy. After the figure rushed out of the Demon Essence Valley, he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. After landing, he took a few steps forward and stopped. He couldn't help but look back. Chen Zong's expression was solemn, and there was a drop of blood at the corner of his mouth. The power of this trump card was beyond his expectations. It covered an area of 1,000 meters, and all 6th Heaven Saint Realm cultivators within 1,000 meters were struck by it. Even a Heavenly General Realm cultivator wouldn't be able to withstand it. Even if they didn't die, they would be severely injured. Although the power of this artifact was very strong, and the momentum it created was astonishing, killing many void demons, Chen Zong knew that there would soon be other void demons chasing after him. Run. He had to run. As for Azura's doppelganger, Chen Xiu, he had taken a blow for him during the explosion. He had suffered heavy injuries and had returned to his knowledge sea to recuperate. Now, he could only rely on himself. He quickly took out some medicinal pills and consumed them to temporarily suppress the injuries caused by the tyrannical force. Then, he mustered all the strength in his body and executed the lightning flash movement technique. His body transformed into a bolt of lightning and swiftly fled into the distance. At the same time, a terrifying aura burst out from the Demon Essence Valley like a volcanic eruption. It was terrifying to the extreme. Killing intent. Killing intent. It was so ferocious that it couldn't be washed away even with all the water in the sea. The terrifying aura rushed from afar and quickly approached, giving Chen Zong great pressure. It was the pressure of life and death. If he couldn't escape, he would die. Under the intense pressure of the crisis, a flash of lightning seemed to condense from the void and landed on Chen Zong. His speed increased dramatically. Lightning flash movement technique. Perfection. The perfection of the movement technique increased Chen Zong's speed by several times. He circulated the Dexian origin formula at full force, constantly refining the power of the pills in his body to heal his injuries and restore his strength. In his knowledge sea, Azura's doppelganger Chen Xiu was also doing his best to refine the massive amount of killing intent he had absorbed in the Saint Weapon Tomb. 900 li. The distance between the Demon Essence Valley and the mysterious Heaven Battle Castle was 900 miles. At his current speed, it would only take him about 6 hours to reach the mysterious Heaven Battle Castle. Persevere. Quick. Even faster. Even faster. Extreme speed, the speed of digging out all of one's potential. His aura continued to surge, rising and falling like the tide. Bit by bit, he expelled the terrifying energy that had invaded his body. His strength was also gradually recovering. Under the circulation of the mysterious ancient flame refining art, the purple cloud black star flame spread out and burned, eliminating all impurities and leaving no side effects. All of a sudden, a powerful aura surged out of Chen Zong's body. Breakthrough. Early Third Heaven Saint Realm. His cultivation had risen from the peak of the Second Heaven Saint Realm to the peak of the Second Heaven Saint Realm, and he had broken through to the early Third Heaven Saint Realm. Lightning flashed across the sky. With such speed, even a general-level Void Devil would have a hard time catching up. However, at this moment, there were warlords and heavenly generals chasing after Chen Zong, and the distance between them was constantly shortening. I have no choice but to use this last artifact, Chen Zong thought to himself. This was the one-time speed artifact that the Flying Cloud Sex Tao Master had given him. It could allow him to reach the Sixth Heaven Saint Realm for a short period of time. The ring on his finger appeared and shattered, turning into wisps of white mist that quickly spread throughout Chen Zong's body. In an instant, Chen Zong turned into a wisp of light, and his speed suddenly increased by several times. In an instant, he had pulled away from the heavenly general realm Void Devil behind him. He was as fast as lightning, and like a flowing cloud in the sky, he quickly approached the mysterious Heaven Battle Castle. With his original speed, it would take him 6 hours to cross 900 miles. However, after increasing his speed, he could cross the distance in less than 2 hours. He quickly pulled away from the pursuing Void Devil and gradually shook it off. After a while, the white mist gradually dissipated. The energy of the one-time use artifact had finally been exhausted. Chen Zong's speed dropped again, and he returned to his original speed. However, a few minutes was enough to shake off the pursuing Void Devil. Even so, Chen Zong did not stop and continued to move forward at full speed. Time passed slowly. Gradually, Chen Zong saw the outline of the mysterious Heaven Battle Castle. He subconsciously heaved a sigh of relief. At least he was safe here. Even if the Void Devil chased after him, as long as it was not an army, there would only be one outcome, death. Following that, Chen Zong also saw the patrolling team. Identity verification. This was necessary because Void Devils had disguised themselves as humans and infiltrated the mysterious Heaven Battle Castle in an attempt to cause damage. Fortunately, they were discovered in time, and the losses were not great. The mysterious Heaven Battle Castle was crucial. If it was destroyed, the mysterious Heaven Army would not be able to stop the invasion of the Void Devils. Therefore, no matter how careful they were, it was not excessive. Chen Zong had a temporary token from the Divine Xian Army's Slaughter Division. After verifying it, he stepped into the range of the Tai Chi Mystic Dust Dispersal Formation and quickly headed for the mysterious Heaven Battle Castle. "Did you complete the mission?" Minze hurriedly asked. "Yes." Chen Zong's eyes had a trace of tiredness. 9 deaths and 1 life. This mission was worthy of its name. If it were not for the Azura clone as a trump card, he would not have been able to complete this mission. Minze was shocked. 9 deaths and 1 life. The intermediate grade danger zone, Demon Valley. Chen Zong was able to complete the mission. It was really shocking. However, it seemed that the situation was not good. This was indeed the case. In order to complete this dangerous mission, Chen Zong's original body had suffered heavy injuries. Even though he had made a breakthrough in his cultivation and increased his strength in the face of death, his injuries were still there and had yet to fully recover. If they were not treated in time, as time passed, they would become stubborn and leave behind sequelae. In addition, the Azura clone, Chen Xiu, had suffered even more serious injuries. If Chen Xiu had a real body, he might have died already. 2 6th-level Saint Rudiment stage secret treasures had been used because of this. It had to be said that in order to complete this mission, Chen Zong had paid a huge price. However, he still completed it. Under Min Zai's lead, Chen Zong once again arrived at the Divine Xian Army's Slaughter Division to meet the Slaughter Master. The Slaughter Master was still so mysterious. Chen Zong could not see through him. From now on, you're a member of the Divine Xian Army's Slaughter Division. You're included in the Blood Soaring Division. The Slaughter Master's metallic voice rang out. Min Zai left with Chen Zong. Congratulations, we're real colleagues from now on. Min Zai smiled and patted Chen Zong's shoulder. Let's go. I'll take you to get your equipment. The so-called equipment was actually very simple. It was the Slaughter Division token and the mysterious god-killing armor. Chen Zong had just become a member of the Divine Xian Army's Slaughter Division. His military rank was only a junior sergeant. In addition to Chen Zong's information, the mysterious god-killing token only contained the terrain of the mysterious Heaven Battle Fortress. As for the military merit, it was blank. As for the mysterious god-killing armor, it naturally belonged to the Divine Xian Army's Slaughter Division. The mysterious god-killing armor was divided into 4 grades: Yellow Grade, Mysterious Grade, Earth Grade, and Heaven Grade. Yellow Grade was the lowest and Heaven Grade was the highest. Chen Zong's mysterious god-killing armor belonged to the Yellow Grade. However, even the Yellow Grade mysterious god-killing armor was a Grade 3 sacred artifact. The mysterious god-killing armor was a Grade 6 sacred artifact. The Earth Grade mysterious god-killing armor was a Grade 9 sacred artifact. As for the Heaven Grade mysterious god-killing armor, it was above a sacred artifact. The Slaughter Division of the Divine Xian Army is relatively free, but we still need to practice killing formations and cooperate with each other. I'll take you to see the Slaughter General Xueling first. Min Zai smiled. The Slaughter Division was a general name. There were also divisions. Xueling was one of them. The Slaughter Division of the Divine Xian Army was divided into 4 major divisions: Sangye, Xueling, Batian, and Duanfeng. Each division was led by a Slaughter General. The 4 Slaughter Generals were directly under the Slaughter Master's command. In fact, it was the Slaughter Master's idea to bring Chen Zong to see the Slaughter Master. According to the previous rules, or rather, when Min Zai first joined the Slaughter Division, he was not qualified to meet the Slaughter Master. This was the difference between an ordinary prodigy and a peerless prodigy. Of course, it was said that only a few people who joined the Slaughter Division could be directly met by the Slaughter Master. This also showed that the Slaughter Master valued Chen Zong very much. Perhaps this was the reason why he gave Chen Zong such a dangerous mission and asked him to complete it. Xueling Division. The Slaughter General Xueling was wearing an Earth-grade mysterious god-killing armor. He exuded a terrifying aura. His killing intent was shocking. When he opened and closed his eyes, there was a faint bloody light. It was as if he was in Azura purgatory. It was terrifying and terrifying. However, Chen Zong felt that the Slaughter General could not be compared with the mysterious Slaughter Master. The Slaughter Master's killing intent was restrained and hard to detect. Although the Slaughter General Xueling's killing intent was restrained, it could not be compared with the Slaughter Master's. Part of it leaked out. This was the difference between their realms. The Slaughter General Xueling exuded a terrifying killing intent. There was a faint red light in his eyes. He stared at Chernzong as if he wanted to see through Chernzong. From the Slaughter General Schwelling's eyes, Chernzong could vaguely see rivers of blood and corpses floating up and down. The 7th Brigade needs new blood. Chernzong will be in the 7th Brigade, the Slaughter General Schwelling said directly after thinking for a while. Minze immediately revealed a smile. He belonged to the 7th Brigade. The Schwelling Division had 10 brigades. Each brigade had 100 people and was divided into 10 teams. Lord Slaughter General, my 3rd team is short of a member. Let Chernzong join the 3rd team, Minze requested. Approved, the Slaughter General Schwelling said. Minze was even more delighted. He had been asked to pick up Chernzong, but it did not mean that Chernzong had to join his team. However, with Chernzong's extraordinary talent and potential, and the fact that he could complete a dangerous mission alone, it was definitely a good thing for him to become a member of his team. Although his cultivation was not high enough, he could grow. When he grew up, he would definitely become the pillar of the team. The stronger the member, the better it would be for the team. Chernzong did not have any objections to joining Minze's team. On the contrary, Minze had picked him up and had a good impression of him. Chapter 1487. The Shunxian Army was the first among the 9 armies of the Xiantian Army. On the other hand, the Murder Division was the more elite part of the Shunxian Army. Not everyone was qualified to become a member of the Murder Division. It could be said that every single person in the Murder Division had outstanding ability and strength. Even among those of the same level, there were very few who could match them. Because it was difficult to enter the Assassination Division, there were not many members in the Assassination Division. Each of the 4 divisions had a maximum of 1,000 members. Those who exceeded 1,000 would become reserve members of the Assassination Division. The total number would not exceed 5,000. Of course, there were less than 5,000 people, but each and every one of them was a prodigy. Chernzong was originally going to be a reserve member of the Assassination Division. However, because he had completed a near-death mission, the Assassination Master thought highly of him and arranged for him to enter the Schwelling Division. The news of the change in members spread quickly. The other members of the Assassination Division would know about it sooner or later. In the Assassination Division, a group of people were discussing. The 3rd one. This is the 3rd person who skipped our reserve member and entered the 4 divisions directly. We can't help it. Who asked us to not be supreme talents? What can we do? It is said that the 3 of them were directly summoned by the Assassination Master and completed a near-death mission. Summoned by the Assassination Master. 9-death mission. Suddenly everyone gasped. As a reserve member of the Murder Division, they could be considered as an official member of the Murder Division. It was just that they were not part of the 4 great divisions. However, they also had the Murder Division token, mysterious god-killing armor, and so on. They had also completed a mission to enter the Assassination Division. However, they had not been summoned by the Assassination Master and had not completed a near-death mission. At most, they had completed a half-death mission. A half-death mission and a near-death mission were only 1 level apart. However, the difference was huge. If they were sent to complete a near-death mission, they would really die and never return. Therefore, no matter how dissatisfied they were, they could only accept it. Unless they had the ability to complete a near-death mission. The Assassination Division had always been a meritocracy. Minze, the leader of the 3rd team of the 7th Battalion of the Schwelling branch, came with Chernzong to meet the other 8 team members. Every member had to choose a title for themselves. These titles were left behind by the soldiers and generals of the Xiantian army. However, they had all died in battle and only left behind their titles and saint weapons. The sacred weapons were placed in the sacred weapon mound, but the titles were left behind, waiting for the new person to inherit them. These titles were passed down from generation to generation. They were a kind of spiritual symbol, a kind of spiritual inheritance. The titles left behind by the ancestors were distributed accordingly. The Homicide Division had its own title, and so did the 4 divisions. It was so detailed that each brigade had its own title. Chernzong belonged to the 7th Battalion of the Schwelling Division. Naturally, he chose the title left by the 7th Battalion. There weren't many, only 6 of them. After all, the 7th Battalion had a total of 100 people and only 100 titles. 6 empty titles meant that they were still short of 6 people to be considered full. Out of the 6 titles, Chernzong did not have much of a choice. Without much hesitation, Chernzong made his choice in just a few breaths. Lifeless Sword. You actually chose the Lifeless Sword title. Yenemo, one of the members of the 7th Battalion's 3rd Battalion, was surprised. The others also had strange expressions. It seemed that this title was not a small matter. Chernzong practiced swordsmanship. Among the 6 titles, only the Lifeless Sword had the word sword. It was natural for him to choose the Lifeless Sword. Captain, you didn't tell the new person about this title? Shuedao was surprised. Not yet. Minze smiled and looked at Chernzong. Chernzong, the Lifeless Sword title is similar to the other titles, but there are some differences. The similarity is that they are all titles. The difference is that the first person to have the Lifeless Sword title was the top 10 expert of the Schwelling Division of the Shunxian Army's Homicide Division. In the Xiantian Army, other than the military rank, there was another way to determine one's strength. That was the seat. Generally speaking, there were only 10 seats. For example, in the Shunxian Army there were a total of 10 seats. The Combat Division, Defense Division and Homicide Division also had 10 seats. Naturally, the 4 divisions of the Homicide Division had their own top 10 experts. The 10 seats of the Schwelling Division were under the Schwelling Executioner. They could be said to be the top 10 experts under the Schwelling Executioner. The first person to have the Lifeless Sword title was one of the 10 seats of the Schwelling Division. He was ranked first, but he was killed in a big battle. Since then, those who chose the Lifeless Sword title did not live long. It was as if they were cursed. Not only were they unable to reproduce the glory of this title, but they would also die quickly. The shortest was 1 year, the longest was 3 years. Usually they would die on their first mission. As a result, this title had not been chosen for many years. Unexpectedly, Chernzong chose it. Lifeless Sword. Death without life. The symbolism was ominous. Minze was actually a little helpless. This was his negligence. He had not been aware of it and had not been in time to stop Chernzong. He had not explained it to Chernzong clearly. It's okay. Chernzong did not care. If he was going to die, he would die no matter what title he chose. A title was just a symbol. Could it be that if he chose the Lifeless Sword as his title, he would really die? No, the original name of the Lifeless Sword was used to kill his enemies, not himself. Since you have made your choice, you cannot regret it. I sincerely hope that you can reproduce the glory of this title, Iron Wall said in a low, muffled voice. All right, the title has been chosen. It cannot be changed. As long as we work together, I believe we can break this curse, Minze said. His title was Sky Halberd. Normally, accepting a new member was a process. However, Chernzong was a peerless genius who had completed a mission with a slim chance of survival. Therefore, no one rejected him. Instead, they accepted him psychologically. Even Swift Shadow and Dark Cold Spear, who were colder than the rest of the team, expressed their goodwill towards Chernzong. For the next month, our 3rd team will not accept any missions. Instead, we will work together, Minze said seriously, showing the spirit of a team leader. Chernzong was a newcomer. He had just become a member of the 3rd team. He needed to work together with the other team members so that they could work together better and display the overall strength of the team. This was the purpose of forming a team. Otherwise, there was no need to form a team. They could just fight on their own. A good team could make full use of their individual strength. Not only would they not weaken others, but they would also strengthen each other and break through their limit. Lifeless, for the next month, you have to do your best to work with us and practice the mysterious god-killing formation. You don't have to be proficient in it, but you have to at least have a basic understanding of it, Sky Halberd Min Zhe said to Chen Zong seriously. Yes. Chen Zong also showed the attitude of a team member. He did not treat it with pride because he had completed a mission with a slim chance of survival. This attitude satisfied everyone. Immediately, Min Zhe introduced the mysterious god-killing formation to Chen Zong. The 9 armies of the Xiantian army had their own formations. The mysterious god army's formations were called mysterious god formations. They were divided into 3 parts: mysterious god battle formation, mysterious god defensive formation, and mysterious god killing formation. These formations were very profound and mysterious. They could be formed by 2 people, 3, 4, 5, or even 10 or 100 people. Of course, the mysterious god-killing formation set by 2 people could not be compared to the mysterious god-killing formation set by 100 people. However, it was also much easier to master. After all, the fewer people there were, the easier it was to practice. The more people there were, the harder it was to practice. Chen Zong learned the content of the mysterious god-killing formation. To practice, they naturally had to practice the mysterious god-killing formation with 2 people. This was the foundation. Only by mastering the foundation could they improve further. Soon, Chen Zong grasped the foundation of the mysterious god-killing formation with his strong understanding and practiced it with Min Zhe. Seeing Chen Zong familiarize himself with it after a few practice, the other team members could not help but be speechless. Is this the ability of a peerless genius? Hong Yan's red lips were slightly open, and her face was full of surprise. Ordinary peerless geniuses do not have this ability. Snowblade's body was filled with traces of coldness, like ice and snow, and his eyes were as sharp as a blade. Snowblade is right. Ordinary peerless geniuses would need at least a day to grasp the foundation of the mysterious god-killing formation. However, Lifeless Sword is too amazing. He only practiced it 3 times. The first time, he was still unfamiliar with it, but the 4th time, he became familiar with it. It was as if other peerless geniuses had practiced it hundreds of times. Eagle Wing rubbed the stubble on his chin and squinted his eyes, which were as sharp as an eagle's. The higher the talent of Lifeless Sword, the better it is for our 3rd team. Swift Shadow's voice was fleeting, but he directly pointed out the essence of the matter. Lifeless Sword was now a member of the 3rd team. He was their teammate and colleague. The more outstanding his teammate was, the better he was. For the team, there were only benefits and no disadvantages. With such talent, he might be able to break the curse of Lifeless Sword and recreate the glory of the first Lifeless Sword. Min Zhe practiced the foundation of the mysterious god-killing formation 10 times consecutively with Min Zhe. From the beginning, he was unfamiliar with it, to familiarize himself with it, and then to master it. It was only 10 times, but Min Zhe was shocked and stressed, but he was also very happy. According to this situation, it might take less than a month to complete the run-in of the 3rd team. At that time, they could first accept missions and engage in life-and-death battles to further deepen the run-in. After the 2-person formation practice, it was time for the 3-person formation practice. Only when 2 to 10 people were proficient in the formation practice could they be considered to have truly grasped the mysterious god-killing formation. Only then could they make the fastest response to various situations and form a formation to deal with the enemy. Of course, if they were alone, they would not be able to use any formation and could only rely on their own strength to deal with the enemy. However, he had the Azura Doppelganger as his biggest trump card. Chernzong thought that if he had already grasped the mysterious god-killing formation when he went to the Demon Essence Valley, then the Azura doppelganger and his true body would form a mysterious god-killing formation. The increase in strength would not be as simple as 1 + 1. Chapter 1488. There were 10 members in the 3rd Squad of the 7th Squad of the Blood-Soaring Division of the Mysterious God-Killing Division. The strongest was the captain, Tianji Minze, who was at the late 7th Heaven Saint Realm. Snowblade was at the mid-7th Heaven Saint Realm, and Cold Nether Spear was at the early 7th Heaven Saint Realm. The other members were at the 6th or 5th Heaven Saint Realm, except for Chernzong. Chernzong's cultivation was at the early 7th Heaven Saint Realm, which made him the weakest person in the 3rd Heaven Saint Realm. His strength was also the weakest at this stage, and he couldn't compare to the other members. However, the other members didn't look down on Chernzong just because his cultivation was lower than theirs. In terms of talent, Chernzong was the most talented, and it was only a matter of time before he surpassed them. Moreover, whether it was completing the dangerous mission or his performance in the mysterious god-killing formation, Chernzong's ability was admirable, and they couldn't help but admire him. The 3rd Squad had their own living quarters. The entrance was like a beehive, and the interior was a circular space. There were 10 entrances on the walls, and each entrance corresponded to a room. The mysterious Heaven Battle Castle was huge, and its interior was extremely spacious. The 3rd Squad's living quarters had a hall that was 1,000 meters in radius, and each member's room was 100 meters in radius. Chernzong was cultivating in the room. There were 7 mysterious god origin essence pills left, and their effects were amazing. They were enough to increase his cultivation, and cultivation was an important part of one's strength. In addition, 3 mysterious god origin enlightenment pills were delivered to Chernzong, and the Fire Dao Will Stone was also delivered to Chernzong. Chernzong took out a mysterious god origin essence pill, and after consuming it, he circulated the Great Mystery Formula to refine it. The Great Mystery Formula was the most common top-grade saint-grade cultivation technique, and there were many better cultivation techniques in the Mysterious Heaven Legion, but they required enough military merits to exchange for them. Chernzong could only cultivate the Great Mystery Formula for now. He circulated the 17th stage of the Great Mystery Formula to refine the Mysterious God Origin Essence Pill's energy. The pill's effects were amazing, and it was pure and boundless. It was easy to refine and absorb it, and convert it into his own strength to increase his cultivation. Chernzong's early 3rd Heaven Saint Realm cultivation was steadily increasing. Time passed, day after day, and Chernzong's cooperation with the members of the 3rd Squad went from unfamiliar to familiar. Whether it was 2 people working together, 3, 4, 5, or even 10 people working together, they all grasped it well. At the same time, Chernzong continued to refine the mysterious spirit essence pills. 1 pill, 2 pills, 3 pills. Cultivation Realm Breakthrough Intermediate 3rd Heaven Saint Realm. The Great Mystery Stage. The breakthrough in the Great Profound Origin Art allowed Chernzong's refining speed to greatly increase. 20 days later, the 7 mysterious spirit essence pills were completely refined by Chernzong. As a result, Chernzong's cultivation had increased significantly. Peak 3rd Realm. Since he had just stepped into the peak of the 3rd Heaven Saint Realm, his strength had naturally increased as well. In these 20 days, Chernzong 3rd Squad's cooperation with each other had reached a level of proficiency. It was as if they had worked together for a few years. Everyone was amazed. Wu Xing, your cultivation has reached the peak of the 3rd Heaven Saint Realm. Heavenly Halberd Minze exclaimed, in 10 days, we will be accepting missions to temper our squad. You must be prepared. It's time to consume the profound underworld fruit. Chernzong thought to himself. Chernzong decided to keep the 3 mysterious god origin enlightenment pills for the time being. Previously, Chen Xiu had consumed 1 profound underworld fruit, and its effects were shocking. He had comprehended a high-grade heavenly fiend Dao intent. Now that his heavenly fiend Dao intent had reached the 2nd revolution, it was close to the 3rd revolution. Once it broke through to the 3rd revolution, its power would be even more shocking. Dao intents were at the all-creation realm and the 4th revolution. The higher the grade, the stronger the Dao intent. However, it was more difficult to raise the grade of a Dao intent. After 20 days, Azura's doppelganger Chen Xiu's injuries had healed and his cultivation had improved. After the profound nether fruit was taken out, Chernzong glanced at it a few times before consuming it without the slightest hesitation. The Fire Dao Insight Stone appeared in his hand along with this, and he merely held it in his hand when traces of extremely hot and profound fluctuations suffused out, coiling around Chernzong's entire body while overflowing with the aura of the Dao. The taste of the mysterious underworld fruit was a little sour, making it difficult to swallow. However, Chernzong's expression did not change as he directly chewed and swallowed the fruit. A wave of cold energy immediately spread in his stomach, swiftly sweeping through every part of his body. Following which, it rushed towards his spirit sea like an endless river. As it poured into the divine sea, Chernzong's soul trembled. It was as if he could hear a profound and vast divine voice, faintly coming from the void, from the darkness. It came intermittently, as if it contained the ancient mysteries and charm of the primordial era. It was as if his soul had left his body and wandered into the dark and boundless void. In the void, it was empty and boundless, but it seemed to give birth to countless mysteries. Suddenly, it seemed as if wisps of aura were born from the void. They slowly gathered and rotated like wind and water. The trajectory was extremely mysterious, like a myriad of streams returning to their origin. Then, an astonishing sharp aura that originated from the heart and stopped at will was born. It was like a sword of the void that could pierce through and tear apart everything. The sharpness gradually condensed and appeared faintly in the dark void. It seemed to be motionless, but it was constantly changing. It contained an astonishing sharpness that could easily pierce through and tear apart everything. Then, a silver arc of lightning jumped out from the void like a strand of hair. As it meandered, it gradually thickened and turned into a silver electric snake. It swung its body and slithered in the dark void. There seemed to be the sound of wind whistling. Wisps of aura filled the air and gathered into a gust of wind that blew in the dark void. It was eternal and immortal. Finally, a dazzling red light seemed to explode from the void and gradually burn. Wisps of aura were born from the void and gathered from all directions and gradually poured into the red light. The red light gradually expanded and became a burning flame. The flame gradually grew from the size of a fist to the size of a palm. The vortex that was like a stream of air, the faintly discernible sharpness, the dancing silver electric snake, the incessant wind that blew in all directions, and the red light that burned for eternity were scattered all around the dark void. Chernzong's consciousness could feel that every one of them was changing and seemed to be strengthening. However, the red light was strengthening at the fastest speed, as if it had received some kind of help. Moreover, strands and strands of profundity seemed like the convergence of countless streams, and they trickled into a river as they surged into his consciousness, causing him to gradually sense and grasp them. The mysterious underworld fruit was a sacred medicine. It was a rare sacred medicine that originated from ancient times. Its value was astonishing and its effects were astonishing. The more outstanding one's comprehension ability was, the greater the benefits one would receive from consuming the mysterious underworld fruit. Chernzong's comprehension ability was very high. Naturally, the effects of the mysterious underworld fruit would be more thoroughly explored. What Chernzong did not know was that in ancient times, the Xianming fruit was of great value to the Almighties. The Xianming fruit tree in the Xianming microcosm was something that the original owner of the Xianming microcosm had paid a great price to obtain. In the mysterious underworld dark void there was no day or night, no sun rose or set, no flowers bloomed or withered, and no cycle of the 4 seasons. One couldn't feel the passage of time at all. Everything was gradually changing. It was a metamorphosis that originated from the dark void. Where is the lifeless sword? It's already the 3rd day. The flame demon frowned and asked, "Does he think that he doesn't need to practice with us anymore?" "I don't think so." Eagle Wing's eyes were extremely sharp as he said unhurriedly, "He won't." Sky Halberd's tone was certain. Although they hadn't known each other for a long time, Min Zhe believed that he wouldn't misjudge a person. The lifeless sword Chen Zong wasn't a self-righteous person. Perhaps it was because of cultivation. After all, sometimes when cultivating, one just happened to find an opportunity to break through. It was normal for it to take a little longer. Just as they were discussing, the door to Chen Zong's room opened and a figure walked out. Numerous gazes fell on Chen Zong as if they wanted to see through Chen Zong. However, they couldn't see through him. "Lifeless, you broke through again?" Iron Wall asked in a low, muffled voice. "I was lucky to break through," Chen Zong said modestly. Actually, it wasn't a fluke, nor was it a breakthrough. Instead, it was a huge breakthrough, a huge breakthrough. Compared to 3 days ago, his strength had more than doubled, perhaps even more. His cultivation was at the peak of the 3rd level Saint Realm, the 19th stage of the Grand Mystery Formula, the 2nd revolution of the high-grade Dao Intent, Heart Sword Dao Intent, the 2nd revolution of the low-grade Dao Intent, Lightning Dao Intent, the 2nd revolution of the low-grade Dao Intent, Wind Dao Intent, the 3rd revolution of the low-grade Dao Intent, Fire Dao Intent. It was fine if he didn't break through, but once he did, it was extremely shocking. Chen Zong hadn't completely grasped this breakthrough and converted it into strength, but he was 100% confident that his strength had more than doubled. If it was completely converted into strength, it would be more than doubled. Strong. Even stronger. What came with stronger strength was stronger confidence. Since they knew that Chen Zong hadn't appeared for 3 days because he had broken through in seclusion, everyone wasn't dissatisfied. Instead, they were happy for Chen Zong. Currently, Chen Zong's strength was the weakest among them. Although he could unleash more strength with the mysterious god-killing formation, he was still the weakest. He was the weakest link in the entire team. Usually, it wasn't a big deal. However, if they encountered true danger, it might become the weak point and affect the others. Therefore, Chen Zong's cultivation needed to be raised, and his strength needed to be enhanced. There are still 7 days before we accept a mission to face the Void Devil. We'll use the Void Devil to strengthen the cooperation between us. Captain Tianji swept his gaze and said seriously, "Now, let's continue practicing and strengthen the cooperation between us. There's no such thing as the deepest, only deeper. It might save our lives at a critical moment, so we can't be careless." Everyone understood this principle. However, every time, Captain Heavenly Halberd would repeat it to remind everyone and strengthen their understanding of it. An army. An army. That was a team, not a single person. Since they were a team, they had to have a sense of teamwork and couldn't be alone. Chen Zong had always been alone, but now, he had made some changes. However, Chen Zong didn't resist. Chapter 1489. The void battlefield was vast, desolate, and endless. 10 silhouettes flitted across the sky at a low altitude, as if a gust of wind had passed through, as if shooting stars had pierced through the sky, as if lightning had flashed past. These 10 figures were the members of the 3rd Squad of the 7th Squad of the Divine Mystery Army's Blood-Soaring Division. Captain Tianji and the other squad members were Snowblade, Cold Nether Spear, Flame Demon, Iron Wall, Swift Shadow, Eagle Wings, Hong Yen, Savage Dragon, and Lifeless Sword. After a month of training, Chen Zong and the rest of the squad had a tacit understanding of each other. Now that Tianji had accepted a mission, he planned to use it to further strengthen their teamwork. The difficulty of the mission wasn't high. As long as they were careful enough, they could survive. Of course, other than personal factors, there were also external factors. No one could guarantee that they would survive. The location of the mission was located 1,700 miles southeast of the mysterious Heaven Battle Fort. It was a mid-grade danger zone called the Devil Swallowing Swamp. As for the content of the mission, it was naturally related to the Void Saint Herb. The Devil Swallowing Swamp produced two types of Void Saint Herbs. One was called the Devil Snakebone, and the other was called the Black Devil Tree Fruit. There were also many Void Devils residing in the Devil Swallowing Swamp. They guarded the swamp while managing the Devil Snakebone and the Black Devil Tree Fruit. The level of missions in the mysterious Heaven Army had always been relative. For example, the mission that Chen Zong had completed previously was not a mission with a high chance of survival. If it was a Mastery Saint Rudiment realm, it would be a half-life, or even a half-life. Similarly, the mission to pluck the Devil Essence flowers from the Devil Essence Valley would not be a half-life mission if it was given to the entire squad. There was only one type of mission that was absolute, and that was a half-life mission. No matter the cultivation base of the target, it was a half-life mission. With the second revolution Lightning Dao intent and the Lightning Flash movement technique at the perfect stage, Chen Zong's speed soared. He was much faster than before. An ordinary Peak 4th Heaven Saint Rudiment Realm cultivator was not as fast as Chen Zong. He was comparable to an ordinary 5th Heaven Saint Rudiment Realm cultivator. However, other than Chen Zong, the weakest member of the third squad was at the late 5th Heaven Saint realm. Moreover, they weren't ordinary cultivators. Therefore, they could only suppress their speed to match Chen Zong. To be honest, the feeling of suppressing one's speed and not being able to run freely was very unpleasant. Chen Zong could also understand that. Therefore, the only thing he could do was to constantly stimulate his speed and make further progress. 1,700 kilometers was not too far for them, and they would be able to reach it in just a few hours. The demon-devouring swamp is a mid-level danger zone. According to our intelligence, there are Demon King-level void demons guarding it. Captain Tianji said as he led the team. A lower King-grade void fiend was equivalent to a 7th Heaven Saint Rudiment stage powerhouse. However, it was much stronger than an ordinary 7th Heaven Saint Rudiment stage powerhouse. Tianji's cultivation was at the late 5th Heaven Saint realm, and his strength was much stronger than an ordinary late 5th Heaven Saint realm powerhouse. However, he did not dare to underestimate a Demon King-level void demon. If he was careless, he could be killed. Moreover, there was more than one void devil in the demon-swallowing swamp. There were hundreds and thousands of them. Let alone a small team of 10, even if there were a few more small teams, they could be drowned and killed. Therefore, they had to act according to plan and not recklessly barge in. Not only would it be difficult to complete the mission, but they might even be swallowed whole. When they were 50 kilometers away from the demon-devouring swamp, the third squad tried their best to conceal their auras and reduce their speed to avoid attracting the attention of the demon-devouring swamp. Yi's gaze was sharp as he stared ahead. He had cultivated an eye technique, and his eyesight was amazing. He could see very far away and could even see very small details. In this aspect, not even Chen Zong could compare with him. Everyone had their own strengths, and only by cooperating with each other could they unleash their full potential. Yi's eyes shone brightly, and there seemed to be a wisp of brilliance swimming in the depths of his eyes like a spirit snake. He stared at everything in front of him and analyzed the path of the demon-devouring swamp. Then, Yi took out the pitch-black bow on his back and pulled the bowstring to its fullest. Like a full moon, a shocking sharp aura lingered on the arrow. As it pulsed, it emitted a terrifying sharpness that seemed to be able to pierce through everything. However, a trace of sharpness was locked onto the arrow, and it did not leak out. Only those close to it could feel it. Take aim. Lock on. Release. Vaguely, Chernzong seemed to hear an extremely sharp sound. The sharp arrow turned into a beam of light, piercing through the sky and shooting out in an instant. In the blink of an eye, it had shot out hundreds of meters, heading towards a demon-devouring swamp that was thousands of meters away. The evil void devil was a murderous weapon, but it didn't even have time to react before the arrow pierced through its body. The arrow didn't come out of the body of the evil void devil. Instead, it was stuck in the body of the evil void devil. Terrifying power exploded from the arrow and attacked the body of the evil void devil. The evil void devil was killed in an instant. Dozens of meters away, there were two other demon-devouring swamp that noticed the abnormality in an instant. However, another arrow pierced through the air and pierced through the heads of the two demon-devouring swamps. Demon-devouring swamp. Double arrow triple kill. Ini displayed his amazing archery skills as soon as he made his move. Chernzong thought to himself. He had once studied archery, but after that, he rarely touched the bow and arrow. He mainly used the sword, but his archery foundation was still there. It was not bad, but compared to Yi, there was a clear gap. If it were him, it would be impossible to kill 3 murderous weapon-level demon-devouring swamp without attracting the attention of the other demon-devouring swamp. Moving forward, encountering another demon-devouring swamp, Yi made his move again. This time, the arrow did not shoot straight. Instead, it drew an arc and hit a demon-devouring swamp behind a withered tree, killing it. At the same time, in another place, a figure seemed to quietly emerge from nothingness. A pitch-black dagger that did not reflect any light silently streaked through the air. It also cut open the back of the demon-devouring swamp and went straight for its core. The core of the demon-devouring swamp was not only the condensation of its power, but also its weak point. Attacking the core directly, it used a special technique and force to destroy the demon-devouring swamp's soul and kill it directly. It was Swift Shadow. Swift Shadow was extremely fast and was good at hiding. Like an assassin, he waited for an opportunity to strike and kill with one strike. Every one of them had their own outstanding abilities. With Swift Shadow and Yi working together, one assassinated while the other attacked from a distance. The demon-devouring swamp continued to kill the demon-devouring swamp. After crossing 50 miles safely, they arrived at the edge of the demon-devouring swamp. However, there were more demon-devouring swamp. Even with Yi and Swift Shadow working together, they could not kill all the demon-devouring swamp in an instant. It was time for the others to make their move. Chernzong had the lowest cultivation and was the weakest. Naturally, he was at the back. The snow blade was unsheathed, bringing with it an incomparably bright blade light. It was like a waterfall, but also like a streak of flowing light in the sky. It was extremely fast, and a chill descended from the sky. One with the blade, a blade that could freeze the world. The snowy light shone in all directions. The dark cold spear trembled and a faint buzzing sound echoed. It turned into a beam of black light that pierced through the sky like an arrow, but it also had an indescribable domineering aura. The flame devil's staff swung down from the sky. The red staff was burning with raging flames, instantly engulfing a void evil devil. The red smoke seemed to turn into a red mist that spread out and spread through the body of a spatial demon. The spatial demon was covered in wounds, as if it had been dismembered. The iron wall shield was placed horizontally in front of him, blocking the Void Fiend's tyrannical attack. The terrifying impact caused the arm of the Void Fiend to shatter. Pushing the shield forward, the tyrannical force was like a mountain, smashing the Void Fiend to death. Each of them displayed their own technique. Only the heavenly halberd Min Zhe and the lifeless sword Chen Zong did not make a move. Chen Zong's eyes narrowed and flashed. Usually, when they were practicing, they would not use their full strength due to the conditions. After all, it was just a practice to train their teamwork. However, when they were carrying out missions in the outside world and facing strong enemies, they naturally had to use their true abilities. As soon as they displayed it, Chen Zong was surprised. Not all Saint Rudiment stage cultivators could master Tao intent. Many ordinary early Saint Rudiment stage cultivators did not master Tao intent at all. At most, they had mastered a half-step Tao intent. Chen Zong noticed that not only did everyone master Tao intent, but they had at least reached the second revolution. Even if it was a low-grade Tao insight at the second transition, its might was not weak. Moreover, all of these team members had developed the potential of their own Tao insights to an extremely profound degree. Every single one of their attacks fully displayed the might of their Tao insight. This was exactly what Chen Zong needed. With his own strong comprehension ability, the effect of the mysterious underworld fruit's power, and his foundation, Chen Zong was able to comprehend something when he watched everyone attack. Countless ideas appeared in his mind, like a stream of light flashing across the sky. In less than 10 breaths of time, all the void evil devils in the periphery were cleared out. Moreover, they did not disturb the void evil devils in the swamp. In addition to everyone's outstanding strength, they were able to achieve this because of their tight cooperation. Otherwise, they would have attracted even more powerful void evil devils and fallen into a bitter battle. After killing the void evil devils and collecting their heart cores, the heart cores of the void evil devils contained energy that could be used to exchange for military merits. Not only could military merits be used to raise one's military rank, but it could also be exchanged for cultivation methods, martial techniques, secret techniques, treasures, and so on in the mysterious Heaven Legion. Fire Tao intent. I have crimson light, explosive flame, and ruin. I can tap into the potential of the Fire Tao intent and fully display the power of the Fire Tao intent, Chen Zong thought to himself. However, the Heart Sword Tao intent, Thunder Tao intent, and Wind Tao intent lack sufficient martial technique. As for the fusion of Tao intents, Chen Zong temporarily put it aside. Only by fully tapping into the potential of the Tao intents and considering the fusion would it be perfect. A skyscraper was built from the ground. Tapping into the potential of Tao intents was the foundation. The extreme heart sword style that I created earlier can actually be used as a method to tap into the potential of the heart sword Tao intent. The sharpness of the main sword comes from the heart, penetrates everything, and breaks through all obstacles, causing the speed of the sword to reach the limit. As soon as this thought arose in his mind, Chen Zong instantly felt the various profundities of the extreme heart sword style appear in his mind, and it gradually approached perfection. The strength of the sword. The sharpness of the sword. The sword could stab and slash, and its lethality was shocking. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.